everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of
Hey Yo
Radio. My name is Marc Scott. I'm joined by Scott Tyson. I hope everyone enjoyed the change of format last week. We're actually gotten a good amount of positive feedback, so we must be doing something right. What's going on tonight, Scott? How you doing?
Man, I'm doing great. It's a nasty, rainy, stormy night in North Carolina, but I'm ready to talk some good stuff, some wrestling tonight. So let's jump into it.
Yeah, after we got off, finished up the show last week, we kind of decided on who we were going to tackle this week. So this week we're going to dive into the NXT career of the legit boss, Sasha Banks. I don't know about you, but I just love that music. I think the lyrics are all her. You know, I love everything, every bit about it.
The song and everything it represented, it just really fully fleshed out her character so much.
Yeah, I mean, I've got the lyrics here too. I kind of want to go into those. I mean, if you can't hear them all, it's amazing. I mean, and this is actually, you know, the guys who did this song, CFOs, they've been known for having like a lot of like very short music, you know, like it's basically written for a wrestling entrance, not a lot of lyrics, like they'll have maybe about like, I don't know, a few lines here, and it'll just repeat like after like 30 seconds or so, and this is sort of like that, but it's got a bit more to it. So here's the lyrics. Had a dream I hadn't made it. There's nothing dragging me down now, cause a girl gonna push it all out the way. Destined to break in, I found my way, yeah. Now ain't nobody gonna take it, cause a girl gonna push them all out the way. I had a dream that I made it here in the spotlight. Woke up to see my life in the shade, now it's not quite. Hustling every day, I'm on my way to the sharp light. It's my destiny to be bigger, yeah, I got fight. And I've had visions of sitting high on my own gold throne, never listening to criticism, I built my own. From the bottom, I've gotten myself in my own zone. Never stopped and I made it, now I ain't going home. I freaking love that. It's just like, it just says like, you know, I got myself here and I'm not giving it up, you know, and it's awesome. Love it.
And you remember so many of the iconic themes that we think of didn't really have a ton of lyrics.
No.
The ones that you most associate as with the big stars is Real American, but that was a song.
Mm-hmm.
But think about in the 80s and the 90s, which ones really had words? I mean, I remember Jake the Snake Roberts' sort of guitar synthesized theme. I can still remember it clearly to this day, but there were no lyrics to it. Or even the Ultimate Warrior, no lyrics to that. And so if you're going to put lyrics in, you only have a little bit of a burst to get it in. And man, don't the words really just fit her character? And not only who she was, but who she was to become.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, you know, and we'll go into what she's become on the main roster, but we're going to tackle NXT first, and then we'll look at the main roster. So I guess let's get going here. Originally from Fairfield, California, her family was constantly on the move to find schools and hospitals for her disabled brother. Eventually they would settle down in Boston, Massachusetts, which is where her professional wrestling career would begin. After growing up watching All Japan Women's Pro Wrestling, she knew from an early age that she wanted to be a professional wrestler, which I think is pretty cool. There's actually been a lot of clips of her like meeting her idols and stuff. You know, it's great to see them being fans, you know.
There's something for me, I don't know how you feel, that this is all anecdotal. There's something about someone who grew up a lifelong fan finally getting to do what they wanted to do and enjoyed. I think it just gives them a little bit of extra drive and push.
Yeah, and I also think it gives not only that, but it also gives you, it makes you feel like they're one of us too. You know, I mean, granted, I never really went and decided I was going to be a professional wrestler. But yeah, I grew up loving this stuff. I obviously still love it. It's just cool to see somebody have that kind of drive to make it happen like that, you know.
Agreed.
So she actually began her wrestling training at Chaotic Wrestling in Woburn, Massachusetts in 2008. Her in-ring debut was a little sketchy, as I'll explain. She wrestled her first match for that company, wrestling under the name of Mercedes KV, in October of 2010, teaming with Nikki Roxx, who will later be known as Roxy Laveau in TNA Wrestling. Mm-hmm. But here's where her in-ring debut gets a little sketchy, because there's also records of her wrestling for Shelton Goldberg's New England Championship Wrestling in August of 2010, teaming with Ivy. I don't really have any notes on Ivy. There's not really anything out there to find of her. But she would end up defeating Roxx for her first championship, the Chaotic Wrestling Women's Championship, in an I Quit match. She'd eventually vacate said championship after a 259-day reign upon exiting Chaotic Wrestling to go work for WWE.
Wow.
June 20th of 2012 is where her WWE story would begin, as she participated in a WWE tryout and was officially signed to the company by August of that year. She'd make her NXT television debut on December of 2012 in a losing effort against Paige. This match was really nothing to write home about. I went back on the network to seek this one out. Nothing to write home about. You know, she was very green, just not the legit boss. But it was a good debut. You know, she didn't mess up any moves or anything in the ring. It was fine for what it was, but it was not a long match.
Okay.
Just lost my spot. Her first victory in NXT television would come in January when she defeated Alicia Fox.
Look, Foxy putting people over.
Yeah, she did a lot of that during her career in WWE.
She did, and you know, look, there's always a spot for that, man.
Mm-hmm. Her first storyline had her receiving letters from a secret admirer, which turned out to be Audrey Marie. And for those who may not know that name, it's really no surprise that she never was called up to the main roster. And by the time WWE Network had launched and NXT was seen by a larger audience, she had already exited the company almost a year prior. She is, however, Tyler Breeze's wife, so I guess that's something.
Well, see, there's still a tie to NXT then.
There is.
There you go.
Anyway, it turned out that Audrey Marie was jealous of Sasha's success. Yes, those were the storylines back in those days. I didn't write it, but I'm just here explaining it. Banks would eventually team with Paige to defeat Audrey Marie and Summer Rae, who, interesting to note, was the ring announcer for Banks' debut match. Wow. I never realized that she actually did any ring announcing until I watched that match.
Cool.
June of 2013, Sasha was included in the tournament to determine the inaugural NXT Women's Champion, eventually to be won by Paige. Sasha would lose in the first round to Summer Rae. And then after losing to Paige in a successful title defense of said title, Sasha would turn on Paige when Paige was consoling her after the loss, thus establishing her heel persona, which we know pretty well now.
Right.
With Summer Rae in tow, she defeated Bayley 2 weeks later on NXT television, and after the match, debuted her moniker as the Boss. So I mean that was, I mean that's going back pretty far. She's been the Boss for quite some time now in NXT and even on the main roster. That's one thing that they really haven't changed about her at all, which is surprising. You know, they like to change up a lot of these people quite a bit.
I wonder, with it being so ingrained, if it's even possible to change at this point.
Well, I mean, they changed Bayley. You know?
You're right. I shouldn't be giving them ideas. Continue on.
And that's the one thing I went back to watch some of these old matches and stuff, and it's so weird seeing all these personalities that we know from watching like the main roster, like Raw, SmackDown, pay-per-views, that are on there every week. Like your Charlotte Flairs and your Becky Lynch's and Bayley and Sasha and Alexa Bliss, and they're all here in NXT at this time. But they all look amazingly different. I mean, what we got to know as these characters in NXT, like, have evolved so much and have been, like, especially like Charlotte Flair. Like, if you look at her back in like 2015 in NXT, she was a lot more like a fitness gymnast look. Like. Mm-hmm. Now she's all been like glammed up, and it's just, she doesn't look anything like she used to. It's really amazing.
No, and it's really interesting going back and doing this, seeing the changes, but also reminding yourself, oh, this is why we originally fell in love with those characters. Mm-hmm. They haven't totally killed it off yet on the main roster. So,
and especially like Becky Lynch too. She's another one. Like. Mm-hmm. Knowing her as the man now, even when she debuted on SmackDown, or debuted on Raw, but like was the SmackDown champion and everything, her look has changed so much. Going back to NXT, a lot of what we're going to be covering here, like she hadn't even debuted the steampunk look yet. It was, yeah. She was very, very much a different presentation than she is now. Always had the same music during those years, but a lot different presentation.
Did you ever learn to river dance because of her?
I did not. Okay, I've seen that debut, and it's really a disaster. It's a shame that they did that with her, but they look for stereotypes, just
they do, but I think Sasha represents one of their first real homegrown breakout stars, where they could put, they could say, hey, she has our fingerprints on her character. I think she represents one of the really first ones that would grow into something very special.
Yeah. So Banks and Ray would go on to be known as the BFFs, standing for Beautiful Fierce Females, and defeated Paige and Emma on the October 16, 2013 episode of NXT. And on the November 13th episode, defeated the team of Bayley and Charlotte Flair when Flair attacked Bayley and aligned herself with the BFFs. When Ray was moved up to the main roster, Charlotte and Banks continued on as the BFFs, starting a rivalry with Bayley and Natalya Neidhart. And this is another really interesting area, because Natty was down in NXT, and yet she was also wrestling sporadically on the main roster, but she was really doing double duty. She was one of those that had a lot of experience and was kind of helping the women down in NXT along.
Which is something, honestly, they desperately needed down there, to be able to work with veterans to get better, to learn their craft. And honestly, who better on the women's side to do that than Natalya? Because if you look at the women's division on the main roster at that time, who else would you send down there?
I'm sure it's going to be the Bellas.
Yeah, I'm racking my brain.
Who else was there?
Exactly. So yeah, I think it would have to be Natalya.
Yeah, other than that, you had AJ Lee, you had Natalya, you had the Bellas. Who else was there? Oh, I think they had Alicia Fox.
Yeah, maybe.
Tamina.
I don't really know if there was anybody else. Mickie James hadn't come back yet, so
no. Mickie James came back to NXT.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know that there really was anyone else. I think maybe because they had to use her.
Yeah. So Banks unofficially made her main roster WWE debut at WrestleMania 30 as part of Triple H's entrance for his match against Daniel Bryan. That was kind of interesting. I pulled up the video of that. It's not easy to spot her because she's just a nobody in it, but yeah, she was there. the same thing can be said for Charlotte Flair too. You know, she was part of Triple H's entrance one year. I think it was actually the same year. There's been a number of them that were like either down in like developmental that have been brought up for entrances, like just like CM Punk. He was brought up early for to be an extra during John Cena's entrance at, what was it, WrestleMania 22, I think it was.
That was the one when he was hanging off the car, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yep.
Pretty sure that was 22. So yeah, and then after Paige's ascension to the main roster, the NXT Women's Championship was declared vacant. And in May of 2014, Banks was once again entered into the tournament, where she would defeat Bayley but lose to Natalya in the semifinals, where Natalya would eventually go on to lose in the finals to Charlotte Flair on the inaugural NXT TakeOver event, which was the first live event televised on the WWE Network back in May 29th. Mm-hmm. That was a really good show. I remember I did not watch that one live because they had a lot of like streaming issues, especially back in the early days of the network. I think occasionally now still they have an issue here or there. But back when they first launched, their streaming issues were like if you didn't log in like right when it was starting or early, right, you weren't going to be able to watch the show live.
It's amazing how far we've come in the 5+ years to be able to stream. Well, obviously they're on the USA Network now, but still to be able to use the network. And think about what ROH went through as well. They had a very difficult time as well. So, yeah.
Well, they just gave up on it. Like they just flat out gave up on it because they were having so many issues.
Yeah. So it's amazing what we're able to do now and see. And in some cases, you're right. To be able to go back and enjoy some of this stuff, maybe we didn't see first run because it was just such a pain to do.
Yeah. Yeah, so moving on the July 3rd episode of NXT television, the BFFs defeated the team of Bayley and Becky Lynch. However, following the match, Charlotte would leave Banks high and dry and attacked to be attacked by Bayley, officially disbanding the BFFs in a backstage interview later that night. So Sasha was effectively on her own now, which I think she needed at that point. You know, she was teamed with Summer Rae, and then teamed with Charlotte. You know, eventually she needs to find her own footing, and I think that's why they finally broke up the BFFs, because, well, I mean, they both need to find their own footing, honestly. Charlotte was coming along, and so was Becky, so was Sasha, and they needed to finally be broken apart just to see what they had with them and grow as performers.
Yeah, at a certain point that has to happen, and man, did they hit gold with those
they sure
four
did,
particular
with both
performances. But if you don't break them apart, you're never going to know.
No.
And look, that's a risk. It's a huge risk. Mm-hmm. But we know how well that paid off, so.
Yeah, so in August of 2014, Banks lost the number one contenders match to Bayley for the NXT Women's Championship after Bayley lost her title match to Charlotte at NXT TakeOver Fatal 4-Way before Charlotte stopped her. Becky Lynch turned on Bayley, which seemed to happen a lot back in those days. Whoever was turning heel was always turning heel on Bayley.
Bayley, otherwise known as Sting.
Yeah, she really was. I mean, Bayley always, you know, she trusted everybody. You know, she was as white meat baby face as you could find back in those days. You know, and that was good. It fit her character. You know, and you know that they were able to use her to do things like this. You know.
Well, and remember, post-Attitude Era, they'd scorched her so many people. There were no real faces, no white meat baby faces anymore. She was really a return to that, something that worked for years in the wrestling business.
Yeah, because I mean, they had her in the women's division, and I would say that like her equal in the men's on the men's side of things in NXT was Sami Zayn. I mean, I don't.
You know what? That's probably.
who didn't like Sami Zayn?
Exactly. No, I think that's an excellent comparison.
I mean, later it would be Finn Balor, but I mean, we know how that went, you know. But
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, in those early days, Sami Zayn was your number one babyface. You know, he was the guy, and even when he won the NXT title, that was it was the same thing as when Bayley did it. You know, it was oh my God, he finally did it. You know, it was a big accomplishment.
It was, but it goes to show that there's a place on a roster for that type of character and that type of presentation. It can still work in the modern age if you do it right. And that's what it comes down to.
Mm-hmm. So, so Sasha then moved her sights onto Charlotte Flair in the NXT Women's Championship again, but lost her title match at NXT TakeOver Our Evolution on December 11th and was again unsuccessful in the rematch on NXT television on the Christmas night episode that year. Banks and Charlotte appeared on the main roster program, which a lot of people don't know, on Main Event on the December 30th episode, where Banks again lost to Charlotte, this time in a non-title match. On the January 15th, 2015 episode of NXT, Banks received yet another title match against Charlotte and again was unsuccessful, obtaining the championship. We're starting to see a pattern here, you know. I'm surprised that people didn't start giving up on Sasha. But again, she was a heel, so you know, it's.
Do you think that's a function of the NXT environment and mindset, not only of the creative but also of the fan base?
I think so. I think that the fan base is a lot more willing to give something a try than like your main roster.
Mm-hmm. Where if you're DOA, it's over.
Yeah, I mean, if you're part of NXT, you're one of our people, and we're gonna sit there and let you have your time and make your way there. You know, we're a lot more. I think that the NXT crowd is a lot more patient, and I think that even the NXT bookers are a lot more patient too. You know, it is still quote unquote developmental. You know.
Well, again, the amount of pressure that they're under versus say what's going on the main roster, it is night and day.
Yeah. So this loss came as a disqualification when Becky Lynch attacked Charlotte, which started some dissension between Banks and Lynch then. Because leading up to there, they were a good team together. You know, they both had each other's backs, and they both had basically the same goal. Eventually, that ended up forcing them apart. So finally, on February 11th, 2015, at NXT TakeOver Rival, Banks defeated Charlotte for the NXT Women's Championship, pinning her in a fatal four-way match, which also included Becky Lynch and Bayley. So that was really, I think that was one of the first times that we finally actually had all four of them in the ring, like in a major match.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, that especially that was like watched by the masses, you know, because by then NXT TakeOver had started to take on a life of itself, you know. That's when websites would start like reviewing them and saying like, wow, you know, like they put on another really good show, top to bottom, you know, and these would be short shows, you know, like short. I think they usually have about 5 matches, so they give them time. And they gave the women time here too, and they put on a really great match. I watched that one again last night, and I was never bored during any of it.
And you know what? That's considering how women were being portrayed on Raw and SmackDown. This was a huge breath of fresh air. Mm-hmm. Women having an opportunity to actually have longer form matches and actually show what they can do. Sure. And I think this is really where NXT really stands out to me, not just on the men's side, but what they were allowing the women to do on their side. I think that's really what's carved NXT. I don't want to say as a niche necessarily, because that might present them as too small, but I mean it's carved their space out. There's something different.
Mm-hmm.
And they will continue, as long as they follow that formula, they will continue to be that something different.
And they started that all the way back with Paige, and also naming the title. You know, back at that time, WWE was all about the divas, and you know, like, and I don't mean that they were all about the divas, because they certainly weren't about the divas, because that was when they, you know, sometime around this time was when the big hashtag went out of give divas a chance, you know, because they had like I don't know, maybe a 30-second match on Raw, and AJ Lee was killing it as champion too. You know, she was cutting promos much like CM Punk's. You know, I mean, she was ripping apart the Total Divas grouping. And I mean, I just went back and watched a bunch of her stuff on YouTube the other night, and I mean, her promos were just amazing. Yeah, I mean, I'm amazed that, you know, somebody, whether it's the Bellas or Natty or any of them from that show, didn't like have issues with her, you know. And I don't remember hearing anything about that during that time.
I don't, but you know, unfortunately, the women were continuously put in bad positions. Oh, they're the cool down match, or they're the concession stand match, which is not fair to them at all. No. I mean, these ladies are working their hardest to get their opportunity, and unfortunately, for years, WWE had placed them into that spot, but shortly, that was going to change, and change in a big way.
Yeah, I mean, I also remember, I think it was like one of the first episodes of Total Divas. The Bellas had come back to the WWE, and they were going to be having a match at WrestleMania, which ended up getting scratched. It never happened. Mm-hmm. You know, they were. Oh, that's right. They were going to be teaming against the Funkadactyls.
Right.
Yeah, it was Brodus Clay and the Funkadactyls versus the Bellas, and I forget who they were tagged with. But yeah, that match ended up getting thrown out, and it never happened at WrestleMania. And I can remember the end of that episode, like them like sitting up in the box, just crying their eyes out, like, we didn't get to go on the show.
Well, I mean, look, they're in the same place a lot of people are. You work all year to get a spot. They were traveling and doing the matches, and unfortunately, that's how they were being viewed. And it's not fair, but it's the way it was.
So Sasha's first appearance for the NXT Women's title was the following week in a match against Blue Pants on NXT television. This match wasn't anything special. It was cool to see Blue Pants again. I had almost kind of forgotten about her. But for those who don't know, Blue Pants, her actual name that she wrestles under, I believe right now, is Leva Bates. I'm not sure where she is now, but she's wrestled all over the place, and she's a great talent. This was just an enhancement match, nothing special, nothing to write home about, but it was like, basically it was Sasha Banks' crowning as champion, you know,
right.
Her first time to walk out with the belt and just be all that, you know.
And it was the perfect environment with the people that were involved. You know, they had this feud going on for what, at that point, a year and a half, probably?
Yeah, about that. Mm-hmm.
So it's the perfect culmination for her to finally get her opportunity. That's exactly who it should come against, because now, new person at the top, and now those ladies get the opportunity to chase her. Let's see what she can do.
Yeah. So she followed up the victory by successfully defending the championship against former champion Charlotte Flair, and in their rematch, pinning her with her feet on the ropes for extra leverage on the May 4th episode of NXT television. That was a good match again. You know, they have good chemistry together. You know,
they do.
Anytime that you see Sasha and Charlotte going at it in the ring, you're going to get a good match.
Absolutely.
And we'll see a lot of that on the main roster once she moves up. But then following that, she lost to Alexa Bliss by countout on the March 18th episode of NXT television, which was recorded on the road in Cleveland, Ohio, which our friend TJ Parsons was in the crowd sitting ringside. This was before Alexa turned heel, when she joined Blake and Murphy as their manager, and was all sparkles, and her music started with glitter, glitz, sparkle, bliss. It was a much different presentation for her as well. Yeah, it took her a little while to find herself, but when she did, man, did she hit it.
Oh, 100%. And I don't know how you felt about her as a performer. Did you see her having the success that she did when she ascended to the main roster?
Absolutely not. I remember seeing her be called up to the main roster and just sitting here like thinking, like, what are they doing? She's not ready to go yet. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, she hit it big on the main roster. You know, Vince saw something in her, and that's one thing I got to say. He got it right with her. She sure did.
And I look forward to dissecting her career in NXT and the main roster in the coming weeks and months.
Mm-hmm. So the following week, she defended the title against Alexa Bliss successfully on the March 25th episode of NXT television. That one, again, it was a good match. Alexa wasn't really a great in-ring competitor yet. You know, she had a lot of her acrobatic moves, the back flips with the knees and stuff like that, but she wasn't the in-ring competitor that we know her to be now. She was, and she is also being a white meat baby face. You know, she came out and she'd blow glitter into the crowd, like or towards the camera or whatever. It's a much different presentation. It's weird seeing her like that now. I'm glad that they made the change with her, that they did. And she's taken into it so well.
She really has.
On May 20th, Sasha defeated her former friend Becky Lynch at NXT TakeOver Unstoppable, which would be the show where Lynch would debut the new steampunk look. I remember that show like it was yesterday. The two of them had a great match. I was not really looking forward to that match going into it. I just didn't really feel that Becky was ready to take that kind of step, and of course she didn't win, so, but I didn't feel like she was title contender. But it was a good match. It really surprised me watching that match that night. She really stepped it up, and with the new look, it made her mean something. I always felt that prior to that change to being the steampunk Becky Lynch, that she was just kind of vanilla. That there wasn't much to really grab on about her, and it just, I don't know, like she didn't do anything to really wow me,
And I wonder, because I'm not in the business, I make no bones about that, I don't claim that, but how hard it is to focus when you have this many talented people. How much focus can you really give on character development? You've got Charlotte, who's establishing herself. Sasha gets her opportunity. Then you can turn to Becky. Then you can turn to Bayley. Even though you knew you had good talent, I don't know that there's enough hours in the day to devote to everyone. And I think that's just kind of where Becky and Bayley fell in this.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting thing, because at the same time you had all four of them like trying to make their way, and there's only so much room there. They really did have a very clogged main event scene at the top there.
That we use the term an embarrassment of riches, man. That's not a bad problem to have, but still there are inherent challenges, even with all that good stuff going on. To manage personalities and to give everybody time, it's not as easy as it sounds.
Sure. After teaming with Charlotte to defeat Emma and Dana Brooke on the July 8th episode of NXT television, Charlotte challenged Sasha to a championship match, which Sasha accepted. When the match happened the following week, Banks was once again victorious, and post-match saw Charlotte hold up Banks' hand as a sign of respect. That was good. That was a something different. That there was so much heat between the two of them, and it was nice to see them finally, like, Charlotte, being the competitor that she is, acknowledge that Banks is the real deal.
Forgive the vernacular I'm about to use, but it was almost eerily similar to something her father would have done out of respect. And it didn't happen a lot back in the day, and I'm air quoting here. But when he did, man, it said something about the level of respect that was there. And I think because it had been so long since I had seen a show of respect like this, I thought it was really cool. I'm like, oh, man, this really is different. They're always finding a way to make me go, oh, wow, yeah, this is different.
It should be noted that just prior to that match, Sasha, Charlotte, and Becky made their main roster debuts on the July 13th episode of Monday Night Raw, when Stephanie McMahon called for a revolution in the Divas division. The revolution that came from that, it didn't exactly work right away. It was, and I'm sure we'll tackle that in your half of this, of her career here. But it wasn't. I don't think it was the presentation that they needed on the main roster. I think that it was a misstep.
So, from my perspective, and I appreciate what you're saying because I agree, I don't think that Stephanie McMahon calling for a, quote, revolution in the Divas division, it just doesn't ring particularly true for me. We know for a fact that they've always controlled creative with very tight grip, so calling for revolution like they're looking to change, I've seen that before. We saw it when what we're about to talk about. We saw it, 2 years ago when all the McMahons were on TV and they were going to listen to the people. It's been done over and over and over. So when this happened, it didn't ring true in my ears, and I kind of feel like that devalues some of the work these ladies were doing in NXT because I know who their characters are. I know what they can do, and how do I say this gently? So going from NXT into a more sports entertainment branded environment, that was a bit of a turnoff for me. I have to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because that's not the presentation I enjoy.
No. So when her title defense in NXT TakeOver Brooklyn came on August 22nd against Bayley, while it was widely known that Banks would likely lose the title that night, none of that really took away from the amazing moment when Bayley defeated Banks for the title with the Bayley to Belly in what I still consider one of the greatest matches in NXT history, men or women. I mean, hell, we watched that together, man. I mean, we were both at that show. Being there live, it was incredible. I still, when I go back and watch that on the WWE Network, I still like get emotional watching it because it was just a crowning moment for Bayley. I mean, Sasha was so well established by this time. She had already had the title for quite some time now, and Bayley was one of those that got shot after shot after shot and just couldn't make that final step. So when she finally did, it was so rewarding, to have watched her come along so far.
I don't think I ever told you this, but where I was sitting, there was a young man sitting beside me. His grandfather brought him to his first wrestling show, which was this NXT, this TakeOver event.
Wrestling show.
12 years old, but this is what he wanted. And his granddaddy brought him.
That's awesome.
And he had a tremendous time. I had a heck of a time, too, sitting beside the kid. But the emotion, the place blew when the 3 count was counted.
Yeah.
And, think about, just from our perspective, and many people have had this one, but we remember when Bayley debuted, and you can go online and find her, the original pictures and things they took of her. She came a long way, man. And, the ponytail, a little sloppy to the side. She always had opportunity after opportunity. She just couldn't get it done. And then the moment when they finally do, think about your favorite sports team when they finally win a championship after so many years. The exhilaration you feel, being able to exhale and be like, finally. Man, that's how I felt watching that match in person, man. It was an awesome night. It was a great match. I still remember Sasha coming out with the Hummer when she came out for her.
Yeah.
It was, my God, it was so boss-like.
It was a big time entrance.
It was, and being the first takeover, they let her have that spotlight and that opportunity, and it just added to what we got to see in the match. Mm-hmm. And it was a great night, but more than that, it was a really strong ending to her title run because she'd held the belt for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, her loss in Brooklyn ended her reign at 192 days. And following the match, Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch also joined Bayley and Banks in the ring to celebrate the momentous occasion, celebrating the Four Horsewomen as they had been dubbed their final night together in NXT. It was amazing. You know, it was the capper on a really amazing night. You know, I know that the main event was a ladder match between Finn Balor and Kevin Owens, and mm-hmm. They should not have gone on last. They really shouldn't. I mean, this should have been, you know, that this was Rock and Hogan at WrestleMania. You know, it's.
Mm-hmm. And that night, Finn Balor actually came out as the Demon against Kevin Owens, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And that was a really good match too. But you know what? The air had come out of the building because everybody was just so euphoric over Bayley finally winning that was a hard thing to follow. Exactly what you're saying. I remember sitting there and thinking when I saw the four ladies in the ring, I'm like, man, this is special. And I don't know how much wrestling I get anymore that says, man, this is special. No. It just seems like rehash and retread. But for this night, for when NXT gave this lifelong wrestling fan, it was a special moment.
Yeah. Her final match, and as a now part-time member of the NXT roster, she lost in a rematch against Bayley in the 30-minute Iron Man match, the first women's Iron Man match in history, in WWE history, that is. I don't know if I don't want to put this out there as like it's never happened on the Indies or anywhere else, but
sure.
The first official one that anybody's really noticed. That they made an event at NXT TakeOver Respect on October 7th, 2015. Again, a really good match. I don't think that it holds up against the match in Brooklyn, but a really good match, and that there was a lot of drama too. Because I remember they had Izzy, who was like Bayley's biggest fan at ringside. And I remember I remember Becky. Why can't I get her name right? I remember Sasha just messing with her. Like, I think, didn't she take her hat or something like that? Like, I know she had the floor going tears.
Oh, yeah. She did a great job that night. And it was a good match. I don't think it holds up to the one in Brooklyn, but again, that was a different environment too. Because their match took place at Full Sail, didn't it? The rematch. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, smaller environment, less people, but it's still a really good match. Don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. And you could see the respect that Triple H had for both competitors at the end once the match is over.
Oh yeah.
Man, Sasha had laid it on the line, and this is the culmination of by then what? 2 years?
Let's see.
Roughly?
Back. Yeah, she made her debut in 2012, so this is 2015. So, it's about 3 years.
Yeah.
2.5. About 2.5 years.
And as NXT goes along, people spend less time there typically if they're going to be called up to the main roster. It seems like. I don't know that we're going to have long runs like we saw with Sasha, with Charlotte, with Becky, with Bayley going forward. I mean, we'll have to see. But she definitely left just an indelible legacy on NXT.
Absolutely. Just as a lot of talent do in NXT, Sasha found her voice and her character in NXT. One of what I feel to be the greatest chance in NXT was directed at Sasha. Sasha's wretched. You don't hear that on the main roster. You know, it's. I had actually kind of forgotten it until I went back just last night and watched a bunch of her matches as NXT champion. I heard that and I was like, oh yeah, that was great.
Different environment,
Mm-hmm.
it just works. And one of the things I've always said about going to an NXT event is I didn't have any trouble taking my little ones to it. I didn't feel it was a place where some violence was going to break out or some drunk was going to pour beer on them. It was friendly, and so that got my kids watching wrestling because they were able to go to these NXT events and see Sasha being one of them.
Yeah. When she left, it felt like there was a huge void in NXT when she left, which would eventually be filled. But her leaving along with Sasha and Becky, or Charlotte and Becky, left a gaping hole in NXT Women's Division. Bayley would do her best to try and keep it going after 3/4 of the women's main event scene had left, but it took a little while for them to patch that hole. It was that was a big loss for the NXT brand.
It was, and you said it. Bayley treaded water until they could get things kind of reset and reorganized. Mm-hmm. But I think she deserves a tremendous amount of credit, and one day we will get to her for what she had to deal with and do as the women's champion with those three moving on. So I look forward to the day we get to discuss her very, very much.
Yeah, she's definitely on the docket.
So
that concludes her NXT run. I'll hand it over to you for her WWE run.
I appreciate
it. Run, that is.
That's right. Thank you. Well, you already talked about Stephanie McMahon calling for a revolution, to quote the WWE Divas division. And Sasha did make her official debut. We're not going to count her appearance on Main Event. But on July 13th, 2015.
What about WrestleMania?
Oh, yes, that's right. That's true. But she wasn't the boss then, so we're going to set that aside. But she debuted that night alongside both Charlotte and Becky. Becky and Charlotte actually allied themselves with Paige, who at the time was stuck in a feud with Team Bella, which was Nikki and Brie Bella, obviously, but also Alicia Fox. And Sasha did not side with them. She came out with her own group made up of herself, Naomi, and Tamina Snuka, and they would eventually dub themselves as Team Bad, which if you don't know or don't remember, that stood for Beautiful and Dangerous. In a shocking turn of events at the end of this segment, a brawl broke out between three teams.
Really?
But who could have seen it coming?
Wow.
But less than a week later, Sasha made her pay-per-view debut at WWE Battleground. She faced off against Charlotte and Brie Bella in a triple threat match, and Charlotte came out the victor in that match. From there, Sasha would enter into a mini feud with Paige and actually scored 2 victories over her. In fact, it resulted in her first official main roster win, and it was by submission on a July 20th episode of Raw. In a tag team match where Banks and Naomi teamed up for the very first time. Just a week later, Sasha would go on to claim another victory, this time in a singles match over Paige on the July 27th episode of Raw. On the August 17th edition of Raw, Banks would defeat then Divas champion Nikki Bella by submission. However, it was in a non-title match. And weirdly enough, this did not result in a title opportunity for Sasha. She would go on to participate in the first ever Divas #1 contenders, and this is not my favorite type of match, but the Beat the Clock Challenge match, which used to absolutely infuriate me. If you can beat someone in 3 minutes or less, I don't need that person on my roster. They're now in the opening card. It just drove me nuts. But in her match, she could not beat Paige for a third time. They wrestled to a quote time limit draw. And due to this, Charlotte actually ended up being named the #1 contender. Following this, Sasha would again renew her rivalry with Paige and got 2 more victories over her on September 7th and 14th episodes of Raw. She defeated Paige both times. She again got a shot in the Fatal 4-Way #1 contenders match for the Divas Championship in November, but she wasn't able to get it done. But in that match, she wasn't the one that was pinned. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Sorry. What I think is really interesting here with Team Bad, I don't know if you noticed it, but I think the last, like, what was it, in the Rumble or something like that, they kind of teased that history, which is not something that WWE usually does. They don't usually go back and remember what they did. What was it? 4 years ago now or so.
And see, I think you said it best. They don't remember, and if they don't remember, they don't expect that we'll remember. So
yeah, but they actually did for this, which is just so amazing to me. And even I think even the announcers had kind of mentioned something about it as well.
That's true. And coming out of her loss, it always seems like they tried to spring Sasha forward after a loss. Again, she didn't take the pinfall. She embarked on a long winning streak. She got wins over Brie Bella, Alicia Fox, and Becky Lynch on several of the house show loops that were running in November and December. But in what would be, I guess you would call a foreshadowing of Sasha's career on the main roster, she disappeared for a month there between Christmas and the Rumble. She would return on January 24th, 2016 at the Royal Rumble and attacked both Charlotte and Becky Lynch after their championship match, and I guess thereby announcing her intention to vie for that particular championship. As Banks was preparing for an encounter with Becky Lynch on the February 1st episode of Raw, Banks began to claim she was on her own, and this was signaling the end of her time as a member of Team Bad. During that match, though, former now Team Bad members Naomi and Tamina would come out and attack Sasha during the match, and we saw Sasha be turned full-fledged babyface for the first time since her debut on the main roster. Mark, do you have any great memories of this angle or her being turned face?
Not really, to be honest. I've always seen her as a heel. I do remember her as a babyface and going after Charlotte because Charlotte was like. But I always pictured. I always saw them as like Charlotte's just the bigger heel, but especially like they would have. I don't know what match it was, but she wore like her gear would resemble Eddie Guerrero's gear, and that would be like another like babyface thing about her, you know, that she loved Eddie Guerrero, and that was like he was another one of her idols, you know.
And again, we see the main roster influence on her as a competitor beginning to start that bounce from heel to face very early on, less than a year being on the roster, or on the main roster, I should say. So for the entire month of February, she would continue interacting with Naomi and Tamina. But on February 21st at WWE Fastlane, Sasha was able to find a willing tag team partner in Becky Lynch, and they competed that night against both Tamina and Naomi, and the makeshift team was successful. They won the match, and following that match, it was announced that both Sasha and Becky would go on to compete for the number one contender spot for Charlotte's championship at WrestleMania 32. They tried the match on the first time, but no clear winner was declared. In fact, it was declared a draw because it ended up in a double pin. Both ladies' shoulders were down for the 3 count. The rematch actually was inconclusive as well because during the match, both competitors were attacked by the current champion, Charlotte Flair. And as a result of this, they ended up doing a triple threat match, which would become a staple of WrestleMania and the women's division, where Sasha, Becky, and Charlotte would compete for the Divas Championship on April 3rd, 2016. But if you'll remember, this is right about the time they retired the term the Divas Championship, and were replacing it at that time with the WWE Women's Championship. And going back and watching this match, Sasha had a really excellent showing, no question about it. But again, she left the event without actually capturing the title in what was her WrestleMania, and for Mark's purposes, in-ring debut. So I want to make sure I clarify there. And again, she had a really good moment on the biggest stage at WrestleMania, and then there was another month-long hiatus, which would become more and more frequent as we're going to go through this. Sasha returned to WWE television in early June of that year and reignited her unresolved feud with Charlotte over what was then the WWE Women's Championship.
This was a great feud.
It was, and it actually started, if you remember right, there was a coordinated attack with Paige on the June 20th episode of Raw, and it ended up leading to a tag match where Sasha and Paige would emerge victorious, and they began attacking. Dana Brooke got involved in that as well, and there were a bunch of attacks back and forth. And Banks would eventually debut a mystery partner to combat Dana Brooke and Charlotte in a tag team match on July 24th at WWE Battleground. And her debuting mystery partner was Bayley. And they successfully defeated Dana Brooke and Charlotte in that tag team match.
Dana Brooke's another one that, to me, like I didn't feel that she was ready for a main roster jump, and to be honest, today I still don't know that she's really at that level as far as being a performer is concerned. But
Sure.
I don't have the book, so I'm not the one who makes that decision. But believe me, I would not have moved her up, especially back then.
Right. Well, after that, she became a draft pick to Monday Night Raw as part of the 2016 WWE Draft that was held on July 19th, 2016. She made her first appearance for that brand the following week, where she finally defeated Charlotte Flair to become the WWE Women's Champion for the first time. However, in another turn of events that would become all too familiar in her main roster run, she would lose the belt shortly thereafter. On August 21st at SummerSlam, she lost the championship back to Charlotte Flair, ending her first reign at only 27 days. At that point, the Women's Championship ends up being renamed the Raw Women's Championship, as at that time they created a SmackDown Women's title as well. Banks was given another opportunity, and on September 25th, Charlotte retained the title against both Sasha and Bayley in a triple threat match at Clash of Champions. And Banks would be given one more opportunity for a one-on-one match with Charlotte. On an October 3rd episode of Monday Night Raw, she took full advantage. She defeated Charlotte Flair in the main event to capture her second Raw Women's Championship. And Sasha made a challenge.
Great.
What's that?
Here's where it gets great.
So Sasha would make a challenge. She wanted to settle things once and for all with Charlotte. So she challenges Charlotte to compete for the championship in the first ever women's Hell in a Cell match at, well, of course, WWE the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, which is going to be held on October 30th.
Wow, they had that match at that show?
Yeah, could you believe it? Man, what a fortuitousness. That's probably not a word. But the Raw Women's Championship match ends up being announced as the main event of the card, which makes it the first time any woman's match had received the spot as the last match of a main roster WWE pay-per-view card. And there would be more firsts that would come, but unfortunately the event, here's a repeat, Charlotte would defeat Sasha for the strap yet again, ending her reign again at evenly another 27 days.
This would be like an ongoing thing here between the two of them.
It is, bouncing back and forth, very short reigns for both of them. On November 20th, Sasha got to compete as part of the Raw women's team for the Survivor Series and was ultimately eliminated by Natalya. The good news is, in spite of that, Team Raw was ultimately victorious, if you are a fan of the Raw team. Still upset over the events of the last couple of weeks, Sasha would invoke her rematch clause the week before that took place, and on the November 28th episode of Raw, Banks would win the championship back again. This time, Mark, I believe you will remember this match, in a Falls Count Anywhere match.
I remember that one.
That was, in fact, if I remember right, she had Charlotte submitted, locked into, it's not guardrail, but it's where the rails are for you to hold going down the steps.
Yeah, that was really. awkward looking.
You know what? I was out of tab just suggesting the spot to me. I'm like, I'm giving up. But at that time it was a record-tying third championship win for Sasha.
That's how long?
Well, it's funny you should ask. We're going to get to that here in just a second. Because the feud was not over yet. They had one more final attempt to settle this thing, and they did a 30-minute Iron Man or Iron Woman match at Roadblock, which was nicknamed the End of the Line, and that was on December 18th of 2016. The match ended in a 2-2 draw between the two competitors. But Sasha would be defeated in what would be termed sudden death overtime. And unfortunately, this time for Sasha, she was not able to invoke a rematch clause. So this effectively ended her first real sustained feud that I guess you would classify under the Women's Revolution banner.
Mm-hmm.
The next night on Raw, Sasha would call Charlotte out to congratulate her on her victory, kind of shades of going back to NXT and what you talked about, just flipping roles. But Nia Jax came out instead and ended up attacking Sasha Banks, which led to a match between the two, this time at the Royal Rumble pre-show on January 29th. So you can see where last month she's defending the championship. The next month she's in the pre-show.
Yeah, she's in the main event, then she's bounced to the pre-show. That's great.
Exactly. And this also, you may not be expecting this, she lost that particular match. But a few weeks later, on the February 13th edition of Raw, Banks would help her former NXT rival and often friend Bayley to defeat Charlotte Flair, and she began her first Raw Women's Championship reign in the main event after Charlotte had Bayley in the figure 8 submission. And Sasha came out using crutches to help Bayley gain that championship. She would eventually gain a measure of revenge on Nia Jax as she defeated Nia at WWE Fastlane on March 5th. Important to note, this would be the first pinfall loss that Nia Jax had sustained since joining the main roster. So Sasha gets that honor. Again, she would be instrumental in helping Charlotte get back her women's title. So she feuded with Nia Jax and Charlotte at the same time, and they ended up putting them in a fatal 4-way match, which took place on April 2nd at WrestleMania 33, and Bayley would come out on top and walk out with the Raw Women's Championship. On the June 26th episode of Raw, Sasha secured an opportunity to challenge for the Raw Women's Championship. She had to defeat Bayley, Nia Jax, Dana Brooke, Mickie James, and Emma in a gauntlet match to become the number one contender for then Alexa Bliss's Raw Women's Championship. Mm-hmm. Alexa finally got her title match on July 9th at perhaps one of the most inclusive sounding pay-per-view events WWE's ever created, WWE Great Balls of Fire.
Goodness gracious.
Indeed, my brother. Definitely shakes my nerves. All right. She actually went on to defeat Alexa Bliss that night. But unfortunately, and this will make Corey Graves happy, under Champion's Advantage, it was only by countout. So Alexa Bliss retained her championship. But in a rematch held between the two of them on August 20th at SummerSlam, Sasha was able to defeat Alexa Bliss and actually became a record-tying 4-time Raw Women's Champion. However, 8 days later, Sasha would drop the title back to Bliss on a Monday Night Raw episode. She received another opportunity on September 24th at No Mercy. She took part in yet another fatal 5-way match. So again, you see the pattern here. We throw all the women together into one match. And Alexa Bliss walked out victorious that evening as well. And that takes us to the end of 2017. And there was a new faction that debuted by the name of Absolution. It consisted of Paige, Mandy Rose, and Sonya Deville. And they debuted by attacking Sasha, Bayley, and Mickie James. And it led to a series of singles and tag matches between the 6 of them. But most of them were won by Absolution. Also in December, Sasha would make more history by competing in the first ever women's match that was contested in the Middle East against her old foe, Alexa Bliss. On On January 28th, 2018, at the Royal Rumble, Sasha would make history as the first entrant in the very first women's Royal Rumble match. Sasha would go on to record 3 eliminations that night. The first one I find just fascinating. She eliminated Vicky Guerrero. She also, it's in the record. She eliminated Bayley, and she eliminated Trish Stratus. So she's well on her way to Kane's mark.
I do remember Trish doing the Sasha, whatever that move is that she does, the pushing them all out the way or whatever,
Mm-hmm. Sasha would actually last 54 minutes and 46 seconds, but that's mainly because she was outside the ring a whole lot during the match. And then ultimately, she would be eliminated by Mark's favorites, the Bella Twins. On February 25th, Sasha added more to her historical firsts as she took part in the first ever Women's Elimination Chamber match at, can you guess what it was?
Backlash?
Close, yeah, almost.
Bad Blood?
Oh, you just missed it. No, it was actually Elimination Chamber. They did the Elimination Chamber match at the Elimination Chamber. I know, right?
It's amazing that it's just lined up like that, You know
what? Sometimes it just works out. But she ended up helping Alexa Bliss to win the Elimination Chamber by effectively eliminating Bayley from the match after she pushed her off the pod when they were, quote, working together to get rid of Alexa Bliss. Finally, on March 26th, after weeks of animosity on an episode of Monday Night Raw, and you got to remember, from that time to March 26th, Bayley was actually betraying Sasha on several occasions when they were teamed up.
Because that's so fit, that Bayley character.
Well, they treat the women like all women are cattish. I mean, we just know that's true, right? So obviously
Absolutely,
Bayley, this wholesome person would certainly act that way. Well, they brawled backstage. They had to be separated, and they finally faced off for the first time on the main roster in mid-April. But their match ended in no contest because the Riot Squad, consisting of Ruby Riott, Sarah Logan, and Liv Morgan, interfered and attacked both of them.
It's just the Squad.
Sorry. I was going to let that one go. I really was.
Current events, they're just known as the Squad now. The Squad.
In June, she actually defeated Ruby in the finals of another gauntlet match for the last spot for an opportunity in Money in the Bank. And again, another first. She competed in the Money in the Bank ladder match, but it was ultimately won by Alexa Bliss that night. Throughout the middle part of 2018, Sasha and Bayley continued to attack one another back and forth. And eventually, and this seems very realistic, they were told they needed to attend counselor meetings to help them be able to maintain their friendship. Now, Mark, I don't know about you, but I can remember many times in history when former best friends were feuding. I think of Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty. I mean, sure, Marty got thrown through a plate glass window in the barbershop, but I remember vividly them being sent to counseling.
Absolutely. They went to Dr. Shelby.
Exactly. I remember when Hulk debuted as the leader of the NWO, I remember them all going to the doctor and sitting down and talking about their feelings and working things out with the majority of the WCW roster that they beat up. I mean, it's clear from wrestling history. This is how it works. And the good news is we had a very positive result from their appointments, from their visits with the doctor. They were able to reconcile their feelings, but also you know what they did. And they weren't just reconciling their feelings, Mark. They were reconciling their concerns, and I think it's very important that they address those issues. They reconciled, and they created a tag team, and they decided to give it a moniker, and it fits them very well. The Boss and Hug Connection debuted in July of that year.
Hate that name. I so hate that name.
Well, you're in luck, because shortly after that, there was another hiatus from the ring due to an undisclosed injury at the time. But Sasha would return to WWE television in October, and in another first, took part in the all-women's pay-per-view Evolution. And on that card, she teamed with Bayley and Natalya in a winning effort against the Squad. And that pretty much finished off any feud, any embers of the feud that were still burning at that time.
That was a really good show, top to bottom.
It really was. The way they shot it, the entrances, the announcing, it really was good. No question. In November, Sasha would compete at Survivor Series again as part of Team Raw. And she would be the last woman from their team that was eliminated by Asuka. But only because she was attacked by her teammate, Nia Jax. And Asuka took advantage. So on January 27th, 2019 at the Royal Rumble, she would defeat Nia Jax to earn herself a title match, which is really, really good, but Sasha would have to face Ronda Rousey for the Raw Women's Championship. And though she fought valiantly, she did not walk out victoriously that night. That led to the next pay-per-view, Elimination Chamber, on February 17th. And Sasha had the opportunity to taste gold one more time as she and Bayley won the inaugural WWE Women's Tag Championship by last beating Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville. It was a 6-team tag team elimination chamber match, and they came out on top. And in their very first title defense, they would successfully retain their titles over Nia Jax and Tamina at Fastlane on March 10th.
That was an impressive-looking team. I mean, I don't know that they were really great workers in the ring, but yeah, just seeing the two of them come out together, that was scary.
You know what? It was an old school look to a team. I think there probably could have been more there to just a feeling I have. Yeah. So they had about a month of successful title defenses, including a trip down to NXT to defend the Women's Tag Team Championships.
Because those titles were going to be defended on every brand.
That was the idea going in.
We see how well that's held up over the years.
And you stole my thunder for the next line because you're right. Because
sorry.
No, it's okay. They took what was a really cool idea, I think, of the champions being able to go to brand and make the title mean something. You've got to work on your brand to get that shot. Mm-hmm. And they went into WrestleMania 35 on April 7th as the tag champions and would lose their titles to the Iconics, Billie Kay and Peyton Royce, in a fatal four-way tag match as Billie Kay would pin Bayley. And that would end their tag team title reign at 49 days.
I have one interesting note to throw in here. And after I finished reading all what I had, I left out a match here. Sasha defeated Casey Cassidy, a.k.a. Peyton Royce, on May 13th of NXT television as an enhancement match going into the match with Lynch at TakeOver. I thought that was really interesting because I was watching that and I was like, she looks really familiar.
Like, hey, I know her from somewhere.
Like, sure enough, it's Peyton Royce, like minus all that is Peyton Royce, all the Iconics thing. But what's really also cool about that is that following show at the TakeOver, instead of showing this is the new signee, they had the group of signees, and in the crowd that night they had the Iconics, Billie Kay and Peyton Royce. They also had the big name of that signing was Apollo Crews, and then also I forget what the guy's name was. He was part of Sanity, and now he's part of Imperium.
Is it Alexander Wolf?
Yes, that's it.
Okay, all right.
So they were the group that was sitting ringside. So it's wild to see those people like that. It's like, well, here's their NXT debut.
Right. No, that's
Sorry
cool.
to cut you off there.
No, it's fine. Thanks for bringing that up. It really is all tied together. With apologies to Marvel and the MCU, it is all connected. Okay, even with NXT. But then something happened right after WrestleMania. Some questions began kind of swirling online about what was going on with Sasha. The following day after WrestleMania, she had an appearance booked on the Wendy Williams Show, which is a syndicated morning talk program around the country. And she canceled at the last minute. And during the successive week, there was a lot of online speculation. Maybe she's looking to quit the company. Maybe she's frustrated with WWE and creative. More rumors began to swirl that both Banks and Bayley were expecting that they were going to have a really long tag title run, and there was going to be credibility given to the women's tag championship, to holding the straps. And again, nope. I'll call them straps on my show. Thank you. Titles, straps, yes, sir. Those words will be spoken here. But there was also talk of some very poor behavior backstage the day of WrestleMania, and attitude being displayed from both stars. So Banks' talk show cancellation ended up being reported as just a personal matter, but neither Banks nor WWE would confirm anything else beyond that. And she would disappear off of TV outside of WWE storylines for about 4 months, and then all of a sudden she go ahead. I'm sorry.
Which is like an eternity in that world.
It is, and I'm not keeping exact count, but I'm going to guess that's about the 4th or 5th hiatus, either due to injury or just creative having nothing for you, or whatever this was for Sasha's career. But she would return on the August 12th, 2019 edition of Monday Night Raw, and she attacked an already injured Natalya. And Sasha would come out sporting a new blue hair color underneath a purple wig, and also attacked Becky Lynch, who was trying to make the save for Natalya. And in September, she would reunite with Bayley as she would turn her back on the fans for the first time on the main roster, if you don't count the whole lead up to Survivor Series, where they were beating people up in the opposing locker room, #Occupy Raw. But we're going to set that aside, pretend none of that happened.
Well, that was when Lynch became the man, and the bloody nose and everything, right? When she broke her jaw or something like that, I think, right? With Ronda Rousey.
Yeah, she did. Well, together, both Bayley and Sasha would go on and attack both Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair. And then Sasha picked up where she left off and would challenge Becky Lynch for the Raw Women's Championship. She won the match at Clash of Champions, but it was only by disqualification after Lynch, how can I say this gently, inadvertently attacked the referee with a steel chair.
Inadvertently?
Yeah, I don't know if it's inadvertently when you bring a steel chair into the ring. I think it's no longer inadvertent no matter who you hit, but what do I know?
Those damn international objects.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate that. After the match, they continued to fight uncontained, unrestrained inside the arena, and the feud eventually would lead to just the second ever women's Hell in a Cell match, which would take place on October 6th at, I know
this one. I know
Got
it.
It's
fully loaded.
Close. You actually picked a WWE pay-per-view, so there is that.
Damn it.
Want to try it one more time? You got this. I believe in you.
Great American Bash?
Dang it, almost. No, it was Hell in a Cell. You were close, though. You were close. But Sasha, again, fell short in capturing the title. And right after that, she'd be drafted back to the Blue Brand, back to SmackDown as part of the 2019 WWE Draft. And then immediately went on yet another hiatus from TV. This time due to an injury to her tailbone. She would appear on October 18th during a Miz TV segment where Bayley was being interviewed. And on the November 8th episode of SmackDown, and Mark, this is where I need you to jump back in, Sasha would debut a new remixed theme featuring her cousin, Snoop Dogg.
I hate that song. I really hate it. I mean, just as we talked about her music to start this thing off, I just think that they took that music, they remixed it, and they just took a crap all over it. It sucks. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think it sounds good. I don't think it fits her character. The original music just had such a big time feel to it. I feel like we've really lost that here. When she comes out, of course you know it's her from the initial the very first but beyond that, as soon as Snoop Dogg starts cutting in, it just goes south for me. It's awful.
And later in the same episode, because that wasn't enough, it was announced that Sasha would be the captain of Team SmackDown, of the women's team, and lead them into Survivor Series. And you have to remember, in 2019, it was SmackDown versus Raw versus NXT. And at the Survivor Series, Sasha, again, last woman standing for her brand for SmackDown. But she would be pinned by Rhea Ripley from Team NXT, who caught her with a riptide to win the match. But it came after interference from Io Shirai and Candice LeRae, so Team NXT working together perhaps as a team and securing that win for the black and gold brand, reigning supreme. Sasha would then appear on the November 29th episode of SmackDown, where she and Bayley brought forward the knowledge that they didn't lose. It was because of Team SmackDown that Team SmackDown lost. And they went down each member of the
take
team.
On the situation.
Well, I'm not taking the blame. I certainly don't think you should either. Ultimately, though, as they were running down each member of Team SmackDown that had let the blue brand down, Lacey Evans came down and would actually lay Sasha out with a woman's right and left her lane, which effectively flips Lacey Evans' face for the very first time during her stint on the main roster. Over the next couple of months, the three women would feud back and forth. Basically, Bayley would defend and retain her title in a match with Evans at the Royal Rumble. And I bring that up because Sasha was absent from several episodes of SmackDown leading up to the Rumble, which led to more speculation that she had sustained an injury. However, if you go back and watch the January 17th episode of SmackDown, at that time featuring a backstage segment with the Revival, or FTR, if you prefer, Bayley and Lacey Evans were brawling in the back, and somehow, someway, Sasha ends up on the floor. And she was advertised that night to have a match against Lacey, and Bayley ended up taking her place because Sasha was shown as being injured in the doctor's office, dare I say, at a medical facility. On the February 20th episode of SmackDown, Sasha would once again return. Bayley actually interrupts the start of her match against Naomi to reintroduce Sasha, and you have to understand they still had fans at the time when this was filmed, and she got a nice pop from the crowd. She attacked Naomi, so Naomi would win her match against Bayley by disqualification, and then Lacey Evans would come out to help Naomi, and I didn't see this coming. They restarted the match as a tag team match. And they would actually have a rematch They would have a rematch the following week, and Banks and Bayley would prevail yet again. And on the March 20th
this led to a match with The Undertaker.
On the March 20th episode of SmackDown, Banks and Bayley interrupted a segment that had the former SmackDown general manager Paige. It was supposed to have happened a week before, but there were some travel issues. But during the segment, Paige would announce that there would be a six-way elimination match for Bayley's SmackDown Women's Championship at WrestleMania 36.
That's so unfair.
It's not fair to Bayley. But later they trimmed that down to a fatal five-way match, and Sasha would be added. Sorry?
I mean, that increases her chances of winning. You know, she should talk to Scott Steiner about that, you know.
There's only a 33% chance of me finishing this presentation. And of that, there's probably only 33% of that as a chance. Banks was added, but she came up short again. Bayley walked out the champion. In the last couple of months since then, they've been really teasing a potential feud between the two, with the idea that Sasha's been the reason for all of Bayley's successes on the main roster. There have been some instances of Bayley trying to interfere on behalf of Sasha and costing Sasha matches. So it would seem that that's the direction they're going. But on the June 5th episode of SmackDown, Sasha and Bayley would once again reclaim the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships from Alexa Bliss and from not Ruby Riott. I'm having a brain cramp here. Alexa Bliss and what's her name? Not Sarah Logan, not Liv Tyler, Liv Morgan. Jeez, just somebody come get me now.
Tyler.
I don't know, man. I need my Dr. Pepper back here. But They would reclaim. They would reclaim the titles as I Google, because I have just mentally.
Cross.
Thank you. I have just mentally just fatigued myself out of nowhere. So that makes them. Now here's an interesting fact.
What's really bad is that I actually remember that by thinking of what their name was as Bliss Cross. Why the hell I remember that? I have no idea.
Bliss Cross applesauce, my friend. Learn it, love it. But they would Sasha again making history as they became only the second duo to be two-time WWE Women's Tag Team Champions, joining the tag team that I just completely muffed.
Bliss Cross.
Alexa Bliss. Yeah, that's right. So they're now the tag team champions currently. That's where everything stands. That is a complete rundown of Sasha Banks' run on the main roster to date.
Wow. So let's take a look at this and figure out. I mean, do you think that her stay on the main roster was as good as her stay in NXT? It's been a lot longer that her stay in NXT was, but do you feel like they've used her as well as they did down in NXT? Because I don't.
I'm going to say no, but I want to clarify why. In her matches with Charlotte, I've seen the Sasha Banks we know, and some just tremendous work.
Oh, absolutely.
That she's done. I feel like the problem is they burn through things so quickly on the main roster that's why I have 7 pages of notes, because they burned through that much stuff in 5 years.
Yeah.
There's no one new for her to work with on the roster. She's already burned through them 2 or 3 times, if not more.
And that's the difference during her time in NXT. Even if she was on the show each week, a lot of times she wasn't in like a match that was, that really mattered. Like she had the match with Blue Pants, or she had the match with Peyton Royce. It wasn't a constant like Sasha and Charlotte, Sasha and Charlotte, Sasha and Charlotte, Sasha and Charlotte. Like they didn't blow through them and just make it so like you didn't want to see it anymore.
Right.
When they finally did build up to Sasha and Becky, they didn't have a lot of matches. They had a lot of segments building up to the match. There was a contract signing prior to the match with Becky that Becky cut a hell of a promo. Going up to that point, I did not know that Becky had that in her to cut a promo like that. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of the we've said this before on the show, is that because NXT was only an hour long, which translates to about 42 minutes or so,
give or take.
You don't have that much time to fill on a weekly basis, and you have a roster of X amount of people, and you don't want to say like, all right, well, Kevin Owens, you're just not on this week, or you try and fit in everybody as well as you can, but you can go a couple of weeks without seeing somebody, and it's not seen as a bad thing. It's just there's only so much TV time, and it keeps you fresh, and that's something that they just don't have as a luxury on the main roster. If you're in a program, you're on TV because they have 3 hours of Raw, and 2 hours of SmackDown to fill.
And like you said, unfortunately, you can burn through people very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Which is why a lot of people get changed so much in the main roster as well. I mean, we've seen big time changes for Bayley and big time changes for Becky. I mean, Steampunk Becky is not the same as the Man Becky is not the same as Becky, who was the first SmackDown Women's Champion. She's gone through quite an overhaul each time. She still has about the same kind of personality, but the way she's presented has changed drastically. And
will probably change again after becoming a mother. I mean, that's just to be expected.
Yeah.
But you're right. And you remember when we used to make fun of Big Show flipping every other week, or Lex Luger. There, we had running jokes about those kind of things, but because of the limited amount of talent you have to work from that are ready to go on TV, they are burning through things. You know what? At this point, who would you bring up from NXT to freshen things up? I don't know that there's anyone I want to bring up to try and freshen, because after about 9 to 12 months, they'll have run through everybody too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the real pitfalls of the women's revolution. I'm so glad they got an opportunity to get more exposure, but the problem with the exposure is you become overexposed.
The other thing is, with the added exposure, they had the Evolution pay-per-view, but they didn't overload it with with matches with the same women all the time. The nice thing is that they brought in women from the past. Trish was there. I think Lita was there. I think Molly Holly was there, right?
She was there. Beth Phoenix was there.
Beth Phoenix. Kelly, I think, was there as well.
Mm-hmm.
They had a lot of the names from the past showing up, helping to put over the names of today. But it helped to keep everybody else fresh and not, it's just another match between Sasha and Charlotte. It's something fresh and different.
And that's the problem when you have a limited roster, is you have to start bringing that stuff back. And notice all the names you mentioned are at least 10 years old out of the WWE confines, maybe even longer than that.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't have enough talent to cycle through, and unfortunately for the ladies, they get thrown out there. And I don't want to say retread being negative, because I love what the ladies do, but we're almost back to the point now where they're sliding further back to the position they came from. Yeah. More towards filler, less of, hey, these ladies can kick ass and take names. And that's what we want from the women's division. But so having said that, it's time to vote. It's time to talk about this. If you were given a letter grade, and what would you give Sasha's letter grade on the main roster?
On the main roster?
Mm-hmm.
Overall, I'd probably have to give her about a B.
Okay.
Because I think that there were times that she was used very well. But when they did give her the title, she'll win the title on Monday Night Raw, and then she'll go to the following pay-per-view and she'll lose it to Charlotte, because Charlotte doesn't lose on pay-per-view. And it's lather, rinse, repeat, So the following Monday, Charlotte would drop it back to Sasha, and Sasha would take it to the next pay-per-view and lose it to Charlotte. And there's only so much that you can do that, and that's why they went so quickly, each gaining so many championships. Mm-hmm. And it's, while it was interesting to watch back in the day, looking back at it now, it's just, I just really feel that they could have done something different to keep it fresh, instead of, Charlotte has to win on pay-per-view. I don't understand why she needed to win on pay-per-view, but.
And again, you mentioned the title situation, and I understand this is a worked sport. I understand that. Mm-hmm. These titles, these straps, are given to people to wear to draw money, for ratings, for all of these things, and in some cases they're given as rewards.
They're props.
Yeah. Stop it right now. Can I be honest with you? I didn't like that. No.
I think you just have some hate in your heart.
Sometimes I do. I own that. To certain people who I feel deserve it. Here's the thing. If you look at Charlotte's titles, and we'll get to her at some point. She's got 4 times Raw Women's Champion, 5 times SmackDown Champion. So you're telling me in 5 years you've held the let's just term it all the World Championship. I know it's not, but just go with me on it. You've been a 9-time World Champion in 5 years? Now you'll catch your dad in about 9 more months.
2.
Yeah. And again, not trying to be funny, but the point is that's what happens when you only have a finite amount of talent to work with. You have these inflated numbers, and I know they used to mean a lot more than they do now, but I think that's a microcosm. I think you bring up a very good point of you just pass the belt around like hot potato because there's only a handful of people to hold it.
Yeah, but like I said, yeah, for as well as they did use her for the for that time with the title, that there have been just vast stretches where she's there and just treading water, and they're not using her. And I don't know that that's her fault, but again, it's someone that they pulled up that creative has nothing for you. And unfortunately, that's creative's job, is to have something for you. It's if they're not creating something for everybody on that roster, then they shouldn't be there.
Well, that's
Get
your
somebody
job.
who is creative.
Yeah, it's your job.
Your job is to write for these people. If you can't figure out something to do with these people, then you're not any good at your job.
And to take a step back for just a moment, and I'll give my grade here in just a second. Look at what she accomplished in NXT. That's not a heavy sports entertainment brand, but she was still able to flex her muscles and find out who she was as a character. They gave her that opportunity. Did they write for her? Of course they did. But you also get some freedom and some flexibility to kind of get the point, get the message across. Find who you are as a performer. If you can do that in a small sample size like NXT, you certainly can do that on the other shows. And one of the things we probably shouldn't talk about, but it'll come up, I know, is as people get called up now, my heart sinks a lot because I can only imagine what they're going to be facing, and that's part of why we made this format change, was to look back at some of the glory days of NXT, because I had a lot of pleasure and a lot of enjoyment watching her. But I've had a lot of enjoyment watching her on the main roster as well, just not as much. And I think, again, because that start-stop writing that you talked about from creative, but also she's had some injury issues, and I don't know this for a fact, but it's been alleged some attitude issues as well behind the scenes. So all that wrapped up together, I'm gonna say a B minus. And again, for those three reasons merged together, I'm gonna say a B minus for that. Once she made it to the main roster.
Mm-hmm. Now in NXT, how would you grade her in NXT?
So I'm only going to grade her probably for that year and a half run that she had. Maybe at the outset 2 years. I think, and this is just from my perspective, from where she started at that beginning of that 2 year run to where she ended, I think it's an A to an A plus, because she was given the ball and she ran with it. Look at TakeOver when she defended against Bayley. That was a co-main event basically. How many matches can we say we've seen where women were co-main eventing prior to that? Not very.
Didn't
not
happen.
A whole lot. And how many were in that building? 15 plus, I believe it was.
Somewhere around that number, yeah.
Yeah, it got me on a plane from Florida. It got you to come down. Several other of our friends and listeners came, and we got to meet for the first time. That's motivation, and I wanted to see that match. You hooked me. I can't tell you that if WrestleMania would have happened in Tampa this year that I'd have taken my family and gone down there, even though we're originally from Florida. I didn't have that. You hooked me. I need to go.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm going to give her an A to A plus because it worked. She connected with me. So
yeah, I'm right in that same area as well, A to A plus. She was really good in NXT. She grew immensely in NXT, and she really grew into her character. She figured out what her character was and grew into it perfectly. To the point where you really, it's one of those things where at least it seems like it that's just her with the volume turned up. And that's what you want. That's really what you want out of these people. You want them to go in there and you want them to believe that they are who they say they are. And much like in Adam Cole, we've praised him week in and week out on here. Like when you cut a good promo to the point where I believe that that's actually how you feel, then you've done your job. That this is That's where Sasha was. She was a great talent down in NXT. She just was fantastic.
There is a very old sitcom from back in the early 70s called MASH, and I'm a big fan of that show. Mm-hmm. And there's an interaction towards the middle to latter run of that show where one of the main characters, one of the doctors, is talking to a general who came in fussing at his troops who had just been crushed in a battle. And he's yelling at them, get up, hurry up and get well, we need you back. And they confront him about, why are you treating your officers that way? He says, if I come in down, then they're going to be down. But if I come in barking orders full of life, they're going to respond. They believe it because I believe it. And I think that's where Sasha, how you can encapsulate that. We believed it because she believed it.
Yep.
So I appreciate it. I'm very grateful for the time that we got with her in NXT, because we're not going to get that back. Even if you sent her back tomorrow, a la Charlotte Flair, it's still not the same.
Yeah, we saw with Charlotte that that this run in NXT was not the same as Charlotte's first run in NXT. Exactly. Yeah, she's a different performer. And she didn't fit. We've said it week in and week out. She just didn't fit.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like, for the most part, when the NXT talents leave, that's kind of their cutoff point. They really don't fit again.
Yeah.
So that would be my take.
So that's our take on Sasha Banks. I guess we'll move on. We've got a lot still to talk about. Well, first, the show has grown. On top of being on PW Insider, Elite.com, we are on iTunes, we are on Stitcher, we are on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel, so check that out. If you go to marks2cents.com, I have links to all of it, so you can find us. We're out there. Kind of excited about that, actually. So yeah, there's that. But now we can also move on to and also, if you're going to go and listen to us on YouTube, please give us a like and subscribe. I know that the URL right now to go to our channel is god awful. With the more subscribers that we get, I can get to change that to being youtube.com/HeyYoRadio or Mark's 2 Cents, whatever we want to do. So please go subscribe on iTunes, give us a like, give us a 5-star rating. All that stuff helps us. So however you listen to us, show us some love.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
So moving on, we also have NXT TakeOver in your house to look at.
Yes, we do.
We both did absolutely terribly in our picks for these matches.
This is why my wife will not let me gamble. This is a primary example.
But I do want to talk about these matches because I have a little bit to say about each one. Great show, top to bottom. I really loved it from the very start when they opened up with a redone intro of for over 5 years, the revolutionary force in sports entertainment. It just took me right back to 1995. Great stuff. Todd Pettengill welcoming us to the show, explaining that we are not going to be giving away a house this time.
And that was a concern we discussed last week.
It was. It absolutely was. There was a lot of tongue-in-cheek references. That they had commercials for just thrown in there for the WWE ice cream bars, which are actually back. They're not exactly the same as they used to be, but there is such a thing. CM Punk would be very happy.
That's right. Only took 9 years. There you go.
Yeah, only took 9 years since he petitioned them for it. Adam Cole had a segment where he did an ICAPRO commercial quoting Bret Hart, even to the point where he says that that's what ICAPRO is all about. You know, like it's just dead on. Yeah, like at one point, Todd Pettengill sends you off to the AOL chat room where Triple H and Shawn Michaels and Road Dogg are back there trying to get the computer to work, and it's like an old CRT monitor. Like there was so much fun here. I mean, it didn't take away from the show either. You know, like I think it just all meshed so well together. I love that they had the entranceway as the old house, done up slightly differently. I don't know if you noticed, but it had a Ring doorbell.
I did not notice that.
Which they actually used later on in the show a couple of times as the perspective that you got to watch. It was a really great show, top to bottom. So I'm interested to get into talking about each match here. The first match was the women's six-person tag team match, pitting Mia Yim, Tegan Nox, and Shotzi Blackheart against Candice LeRae, Dakota Kai, and Raquel Gonzalez. My pick for this match was for LeRae, Kai, and Gonzalez to go over because Candice LeRae was a freshly turned heel. But what was amazing to me about this was that they took that all out of it in the finish because they had Mia Yim and Candice LeRae go and brawl to the back. So what we were left with was Tegan Nox and Shotzi Blackheart versus Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez. So by then, with Candice not actually being part of the actual finish, Tegan Nox and Shotzi Blackheart needed a victory over Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez, which they got here. Right. So I mean, this was. You want to talk about booking? Like this was genius.
It was, and one of the things we talked about last week was, look, I trust in Triple H until, and this was one of those opportunities where this could have been an until, where I'd have been like, nah, I don't know about that. But by taking Candice out of the match and away in the focus, you can go ahead and have her lose, and she doesn't lose anything. I think if she had taken the pinfall, we'd be having a different conversation right now.
Sure.
But yeah, I thought it was a really good opening match, and I like what they did. It was subtle to get her away, but it works overall.
Yeah. Next up, I think, was the Damian Priest and Finn Balor match, right?
It was, yes.
Yeah, so that match, no, I'm already 0 for 1 here, but I wasn't unhappy with that finish. I just was sad that I got one wrong. But I'll be very sad that I got a lot of them wrong at this show. Next up was Damian Priest versus Finn Balor. I had actually said that Damian Priest should go over because, I wanted to see more Priest versus Balor, and I wanted this to continue on, which I guess it still can technically, but I felt that Finn Balor going over Damian Priest would have ended the feud. It would have gotten Finn Balor would have gotten back at Damian Priest for everything,
right?
And Finn Balor ended up going over again in a really great match. But here I'm 0 for 2 now.
Well, you're in good company because I also come in at 0 for 2. There's one spot in the match I wanted to bring up to you, and that was the bump that Damian Priest took onto the steps.
Oh, dear
God. And he took it in motion. He didn't think about it. He just took it.
No.
But
he just flew right back, took it, and boom, that was that.
I'm sorry, man. I don't need to see that. I don't want to see that.
No.
I don't want my stars taking that bump ever again. I like physicality. If he misses and comes up just a little bit short, that's the back of his neck.
Yeah.
And we're having a very different conversation, different tone to a show. So please take that out. That really hurt my heart, if that makes any sense. Watch.
I'm right there with you. Yeah.
You just thinking about it now, my whole body just goes limp. Like, oh, you don't need to do that.
No.
So that kind of affected how I viewed the match. To be honest, that's brutal. Mick Foley did those kind of bumps, and look where he ended up.
Yeah, you see
made
the
a
way
lot
that
of.
he gets around right now. It's
Yeah.
not a pretty sight. You know,
It's not, and I think he would tell you it's not worth it.
Yeah.
The money's good.
I would hope that he would tell you that. You never know. He was not always quite right in the head, but you know, I would hope that he would say that.
Well, you know, you bring up a good point. Wrestlers are a different lot. Okay,
They
so
certainly
yeah. But trying to take that particular portion out, I thought it was a good match. It was peculiar booking for me for Finn Balor to win the first one, because now I'm sitting there thinking, well, where do we come back from here?
Now.
I liked it. It took 2 coup de grace to put him away. I did like that.
Oh yeah.
But I'm interested to see where they go. This is one of those that lands in the nebulous area. I'm just not sure how I feel until I see where it goes from there. Good match.
Sure.
But I'm not sure how I feel about the story.
Yeah, and Damian Priest is another one. Yeah, the guy's solid in the ring. I'm not completely sold on him. Maybe it's the character. I don't fully get him. But he came through in this match. I thought he had a really good showing.
Agreed. I think he had a good showing. I just need to see where we go from here. So
yeah. So next up, I believe, was the North American Championship match.
That is correct. Yes.
Right. It was Keith Lee defending against Johnny Gargano. This is where I go 0 for 3. I was expecting Gargano to go over here because, again, he was freshly turned heel. And, you know, you kind of want to try and foster that, you know, get that going. And, you know, but the one thing, a couple of things here. I loved that Keith Lee came out wearing his gear that said Black Lives Matter. You know, I mean, and I don't want to get into politics on here. I think there's plenty of other podcasts for that if you want to listen to that. But I think that was really needed, and I thought that really fit well here, considering who it was and everything. And as I've spoken online with others, especially with Keith Lee wearing that, you can't go taking the title off of him, throwing it on Johnny Gargano at this show with everything that's going on in the world today.
You know, that's interesting. I didn't put those two items together at the time.
Yeah, I you know, had he not been wearing that, I think it's a different story. Yeah, if they're just ignoring everything going on in the world. But especially after everything, like all the heat that they got from laying off everybody as COVID-19 was taking off, and you know, they already got a lot of heat for that. They didn't need to go taking the belt off of a black man during all these rioting, and it's not a good look. So I can understand why they went this route. Johnny Gargano, I don't feel looked bad in this loss. I mean, there were certainly numerous times during this match that I thought that was it for Keith Lee, and he ended up kicking out. You know, I mean that the Spirit Bombs were great. I mean, and they teased that so well too. There were so many times during the match where Keith Lee had him up for a power bomb, and Johnny would get out of it, and finally when he hit it, it was just so much emotion, and it's just like, yes, finally he got it, you know, and it was a great match for all of it, you know, the brawling, the fighting in the ring, even, and that's the thing, like, Gargano came out and he dropped the key into his tights. Why did the referee not check anywhere, you know, like, for something like that, especially since he, like, clearly did it right on, like, during his entrance, you know, I don't.
Well, some wrestlers are a little bit more, or some referees are a little more lax in their searches than perhaps some others are.
You mean like go checking inside the guy's tights?
You can do that. I'm good. Thanks. Yes. You brought up some really good things I want to unpack here, and going back to the Spirit Bomb, going for it, and then finally hitting that. Too many times wrestling matches put together where somebody hits a big spot right away, and there's no meaning to it. It's just a big spot. But by teasing it, when he finally hit it, it mattered. It meant something. So I certainly appreciated where we're coming from there. I also went 0 for 3. I joined you in that category because I thought Gargano needed to win, and I still do. I'm gonna die on that hill. I think he did. However, I'm going to give WWE, Triple H, NXT, whomever you want to give credit for letting Keith Lee wear what he needed to wear.
Absolutely.
Too often when this COVID-19 thing has happened, WWE has pretended like we can't say it, we can't own it, we can't admit something's happening outside of our doors. And I think that's been to their detriment to a large degree. I appreciate the fact that they did not stifle Keith Lee's ability to express what he was feeling, what he's thinking. Again, no, we're not going to get into politics here, but he had a message to speak and it needed to be said. And if you watched his promo, from 2 weeks ago, where he's talking about trying to get into wrestling and things he went through, the man's been through a lot, and just touching the surface of that man's life, I'm sure, and what he's been through. So I appreciate the fact that it was hands off. Let him do what he needs to do. That means a lot. But having said all that, I still think Johnny should have been caught cheating or something. I don't think he needed to take a clean pinfall loss in the middle of the ring, so to speak.
Yeah.
So, just my opinion. We'll see where things go. But that was a bit of a head scratcher for me. But now putting the pieces together, what you're saying, I can certainly understand where I think the perspective was coming from.
Mm-hmm. Now, one other thing I noticed, this show they had a quote unquote crowd. It was really kind of cool seeing what does he go by now? Rick. What the hell was that guy's name? Rick Bugas or something like that. They call him now. He's the guy that came out. It's got to be almost a year ago now, or whatever. He was like playing air guitar and playing piano on the ropes and stuff like that. He was in the crowd. We saw a lot of him. But yeah, it's all NXT people in the crowd, spaced out and cheering for who they want to cheer for. And I guess it feels very put on as well. It's not your typical NXT crowd that has their own chants and everything. They try their best, but there was one thing: Johnny Gargano's entrance. They were chanting "Gargano sucks." Gargano sucks. Like, he's not John Cena. I'm sorry. He doesn't have John Cena's music. Like, you can't go singing. Like, it's one thing when it's like part of the John Cena show, he's coming out and like the music goes along with that chant. But Gargano's music doesn't match that chant. There's no reason for them to use that chant for Gargano. That just felt very put on to me. I didn't really appreciate that one, but for the most part, they did a nice job with Keith Lee's entrance. Like a lot of the Keith Lee, Keith Lee, and bask in his glory. Like that, they got that. They need to be a little bit louder. But considering it's a smaller crowd than they normally have, it worked. Sure.
No, and it's interesting that Raw and SmackDown struggle when NXT finds ways week after week after week to put on good shows. It can be done, yet you're basically in the same environment. So
it is.
You figure it out.
Other than I think Raw and SmackDown are at the Performance Center, and NXT is running over at Full Sail Live, I think, right?
Right. Yeah, but it's basically the same environment. Same structures that you're having to deal with. You have your restrictions. I'm just going to say it. It really comes down to the creative, man.
Yep.
It really, really does, and it's stark every dadgum week.
Mm-hmm. So next up, and this surprised me at the placement of this match on the card, was the NXT Championship match: Adam Cole versus the Velveteen Dream. And this was a backlot brawl. We'll get into the environment in a minute. And the big stipulation was that if Dream loses, he cannot challenge for the NXT title while Adam Cole is still champion. Because of that stipulation, I went 0 for 4 here. But I was very happy that I went 0 for 4 here because I do like Adam Cole as champion. I think that the championship is in the right place right now, and I don't. I've said this in past weeks on this show. Velveteen Dream is a 1A to me. I don't feel that he's a top guy, but that's fine. I feel like, and I was talking with my friend Rich the other day about this too. I see, Velveteen Dream is he's very dramatic, in his attires and his persona. He reminds me much like a Goldust, and I think that's why I kind of characterize him as a 1A and not a 1. You would never put the WWE title on Goldust. You can have him in matches, like he was in a feud with The Undertaker. It wasn't over the WWE title. He had a casket match with The Undertaker. It was believable, I mean, say what you want about Dustin Reynolds. The guy's a hell of a worker, and he pulled off that character very well. The Goldust character is legendary in WWE, and when he decides that he wants to hang him up, his place in the Hall of Fame is waiting for him. That being said, I feel that Velveteen Dream is much like the Goldust character in terms of, he's really good. He's a great worker. He's a good bumper, and he's a great character. But he's not a character in terms of like a top guy. He can be there and he can challenge. But I don't. If it's me, I don't ever put the top title on him. But he did show up at this match, dressed up as Negan, which was fantastic. Negan,
yes, sir.
Dead.
Yes, sir.
I absolutely loved it. He looked great. Every time that he debuts another look, whether it's Hollywood Hogan or who else has he done? He's done a number of different characters in these takeover matches. Negan was awesome. It
really was, and very pop culturally relevant.
Yeah, absolutely. The back lot, I didn't like the way it looked. Having all the cars in the circle, it looked like an Iron Circle match that they had like years ago during the Attitude Era, and then they also, I guess it's meant to be like a Hollywood back lot. So all the houses and stuff were fake, and they looked fake. And when like Adam Cole went to try and get away by pulling on the doors and stuff, it's just like it just like that just looks silly, like oh it's a fake door, like dude, open your eyes.
Right.
There isn't much that Adam Cole does or says that I have any gripes about, so I guess I'll let him go on this, but like when he was trying to get away, trying to go through like a door that's not really a door, that's very obviously not really a door. I got to take issue with it, But again, Dexter Lumis shows up to, because in this type of a match, the Undisputed Era. This is right up their alley. They can do whatever the hell they want. It can be 4-on-1, and it's within the rules. So, why the hell not? And Dexter Lumis showed up to even the odds. Took Bobby Fish and Roderick Strong away, and we continued on after Adam Cole had a hell of a bump onto a. One of the car windshields. He was cut up from that too. It looked nasty.
Again, I don't need to see that. I don't need to see that bump ever happen again.
Yeah, the same thing here. Yeah.
It was a great match. It reminded me of the what was the match they had on SmackDown years ago with Eddie Guerrero and John Cena, where they had the cars kind of circling.
That was the Iron Circle match.
Yeah. It kind of reminded me a little bit of that, except even more produced. And you could argue overproduced, because I know you weren't a fan of the Gargano Ciampa stuff, and this definitely fell in the same vein of how they booked this. I'm not going to say a match, but it was really a spectacle in a lot of ways.
I didn't have so much of a problem with the way this one was presented. I enjoyed watching it. It wasn't like the Gargano and Ciampa match to me. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I didn't see it in the same vein.
But I do think what we talked about several weeks ago on the show is coming true. We're going to see more and more of those style presentations being made as time goes on, especially due to the COVID-19 restriction, having to be creative on some things. I think you will probably see some more. Sure. But, all right, Velveteen Dream. Dexter Lumis got rid of the Undisputed Era. You had your shot. You couldn't do it. At this point, I don't know what's left for him to do to challenge for a title, because they've proven now he can't get the job done. With every advantage stripped away from the Undisputed Era, he still couldn't do it. And it really reminds me of Ric Flair. You know, they would do these matches where if he gets disqualified, he loses the title back in the day. And then the face would find a way to do something stupid, and Flair would capitalize on it and get the pin. And it's like, my God, if you can't win when he can't do anything, when are you going to actually win?
Yeah.
And a lot of his momentum has stalled, to be honest.
I felt like it stalled after he lost the North American Championship, to Roderick Strong, and then he just disappeared for a few weeks there, or it was longer than that. It was a couple of months, wasn't it?
It was a couple of it was more than a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I felt that his momentum really took a major hit after he lost that title, which is why I didn't see him. I didn't see the logic in putting him into a main event feud here.
I think he did the best with what he had.
Sure.
I really do.
He always does.
But I'm going to tell you, man, I don't know how you get momentum back for him. Even prior to this, I didn't feel a whole lot of momentum. I remember he had a clean pin on Adam Cole in a tag match a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Did you feel a great deal of momentum or a groundswell?
No, because it was just a tag match, and it wasn't it didn't feel like a legit win,
Exactly.
It was like he won because of outside circumstances,
Ultimately, that's exactly how it went down. And so, I took another loss, another one in the loss column for me. I really thought that's what they were building to, but now, as I sit here, I don't know what you do with Velveteen Dream unless you just retool him or set him over on the side for a little while. I don't know where he goes from this. I certainly wouldn't promote him to the main roster right now because he has zero momentum behind him.
Yeah, yeah.
And Lord knows when you hit the main roster, you'd better hit it hot.
Mm-hmm. Or you're going to be bust down to main event right away. Just talk to Ricochet about that.
Not just Ricochet, but talk to Bianca Belair.
Yeah.
Who was on a main event.
Yeah,
last week.
Why the hell move her up there if that's what you're going to do with her?
I don't know. I don't know what the point is other than she was in Orlando and you needed a body. Yeah. I mean, it really does come across that way. And I worry for him future-wise because if you can't have momentum on NXT, where can you get it?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's kind of my measuring stick. Look, if you can't be performing at a high level or momentum there, I don't know what you're going to do on the main roster. When you may get somebody on the writing team that supports you, or you may not. You just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was surprised at that, but I guess we move into another feud for Adam Cole.
Yeah. And that next feud for Adam Cole comes out of the next match, which was Tommaso Ciampa losing to Karrion Kross. Again, Karrion Kross with the big-time entrance. And I messaged you about this too. I clearly I try and stay on top of WWE music all the time.
Sure.
WWE hasn't actually released any any new music for anybody in quite some time. They have apparently parted ways with CFOs who had been doing their music, which I mean they did God, I mean, it's a who's who. You know, I mean, from Bobby Roode's Glorious to Sasha's music to Samoa Joe to I mean, everybody who's come up from NXT within the last 5 years or so. I want to say going back to like Charlotte's music. All of that has been created by them. They are no longer associated with WWE for whatever reason. And a lot of the music that WWE is using for new people is just like out of whatever they have in-house. So like if you want to go and get like a Dominic Dijakovic music, it's just not out there unless you want to go on to like YouTube and download it from YouTube. You know, if you want to buy it like legitimately off of like iTunes or like Apple, Amazon Music, it's just not there. But you know what is there? Karrion Kross's music. Of everybody who's come up recently, the only one whose music is there is Karrion Kross. So clearly, you know, we said it a couple of weeks ago. They are strapping the rocket to this guy. Holy crap!
And again, Impact had him. They didn't want to pay him, but they had him.
Yeah.
And look what Triple H is able to see in both he and Scarlett.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, they see money. You don't spend that amount of money if you don't expect a huge return on your investment.
And before we get into the match here, I want to say, like, Scarlett, I have a feeling that name's going to change.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know if you noticed it, but a couple of times in the match, I noticed Beth calling her Charlotte.
Mm.
So there's definitely going to be that, you know, Charlotte, Scarlett. I mean, Vince doesn't like to have two people with the same name. That's why Shane Helms became.
He was Gregory Helms.
Gregory Helms, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why. Yeah. I mean, there's been countless times where people have had their names changed just because, well, we can't have another person with the same name. People won't understand, you know, like that there's more than one person in the world with that same name. You know,
well, remember, when you say the phrase "my son Shane," we have to be able to differentiate which Shane we're talking about, because no one will know that you mean a McMahon because your last name is McMahon.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a reasonable possibility, but like we were saying before, oh my God, they believe in this couple. They do.
Yeah. And man, is Scarlett looking good that night, huh?
It didn't hurt my feelings. Let's put it like that. Thumbs up to her. And I thought that Cross would win the match, hopefully convincingly, and I would say that he did.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I mean, he took on Tommaso Ciampa, who has been a main eventer here in NXT for quite a while now. I mean, he ripped him apart. Yeah, I mean, Ciampa had his spots. You know, it wasn't completely one-sided, but it wasn't anywhere near as long of a match as you'd expect out of Ciampa. So clearly, they have big plans for Karrion Kross.
And what does that say about Tommaso Ciampa? He's not worried about his spot.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
He's giving back. Look, dude, that's a locker room leader who's like who went through that. This guy's been a main eventer for the last 2 years at the highest level. You know, just headlined one of their main events in an almost hour-long match or spectacle, however you want to look at it, with Johnny Gargano. And now all of a sudden we're having a 10-minute or less match with the new guy, and you're putting him over. Mm-hmm. Man, give me those kind of people all day long. People that just want to work and do their job. No pun intended. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I thought it was a good match. It made Karrion Kross look really strong, but I'm looking at how strong I think Ciampa looks coming out of this. Yeah, as a leader, I'm very impressed with what he did in that match, or allowed to be done, I should say.
Yeah. Now here's where it got really funny because I'm sitting there, I'm like, wow, that was a really great show, and completely forgetting about the NXT Women's Championship match. So I'm like, wow, like that was a really great show, and they closed out with Karrion Kross winning. Like, wow, they really have high hopes for this dude, and they continued on, and they're doing backstage interviews, and I'm like, why aren't they just putting up the graphic and saying, have a good night, everybody? And it's like, oh yeah, well, there's the Women's Championship match I completely forgot about. So the next matchup was the main event of the Charlotte Flair defending the NXT Women's Championship against Rhea Ripley and Io Shirai. And man, do I have a gripe about this.
I'm going to let you have first shot at it. Go. I'm going to mute. It's all you, big man.
Going back before WrestleMania, Charlotte came to NXT. Charlotte won the Royal Rumble and chose to face Rhea Ripley for the NXT Women's Championship at WrestleMania. Rhea showed up to WrestleMania as Women's Champion, and we are saying how much it would do for the women, for the NXT brand, for Rhea Ripley, for her to go to the big show, the main event, the main attraction of the year for WWE, and have a victory over Charlotte Flair, who has been the centerpiece of the whole women's revolution, the women's division, whatever you want to call it. Charlotte Flair is just the diamond of the division. And here she goes, and she beats Rhea Ripley. So Rhea Ripley ends up coming back to NXT broken. So now she's, I mean, they even had like backstage segments saying, with interviews of her saying, I underestimated her. Like, seriously, you underestimated Charlotte fucking Flair? Get out of here. So she comes back, and now she's broken. She lost at the biggest show of the year, and she immediately wants to get another shot at Charlotte Flair. Io Shirai won the number one contendership ladder match, so she's in the mix now. So here we go. We're going into TakeOver in your house with all three having issues with each other, And how does the match end? I mean, the match itself was really good. A lot of really great action from all three of them. We had typical three-way match stuff where two of them are working while one of them's on the outside of the ring, and then that one makes it back into the ring while someone else is thrown out. It's fine. That's how WWE works these things. That's fine. It's what we expect. But the end comes when Charlotte has the figure eight on Rhea Ripley, and Io Shirai comes off the top rope and pins Rhea Ripley. So again, Charlotte Flair doesn't lose per se. She loses the title, doesn't get pinned, and Io Shirai pins Rhea Ripley. So not only did Rhea Ripley go to WrestleMania and lose to Charlotte Flair, but now she's also lost to Io Shirai, who clearly, would it really have hurt them so much if they had Rhea Ripley go to WrestleMania, defeat Charlotte Flair, and then come back and lose to Io Shirai? Because that's what they ended up doing, is just flipping the title from Rhea Ripley to Io Shirai. They just didn't need to put it on Charlotte Flair in order to do this. I don't understand the booking of this whatsoever. This whole situation, Charlotte Flair didn't need to be thrown into this at all. I hated this. Scott?
Before I weigh in, I just wanted to make sure you were done. Because out of respect,
I think I said everything I needed to say.
I wanted you to have your moment. All right, so just a couple of things.
Is that a good enough rant for you?
Dude, that was epic. That was really well done. So just a couple of things. I got this one right. Yay. This is the most disappointing right guess that I got. Because we sat here and talked last week and said, I could see where Charlotte never gets pinned and Io Shirai wins the title. and Rhea Ripley loses again. Dadgummit, sure enough, if that didn't happen. So here's my question to follow up your rant. What was the point of bringing Charlotte Flair to NXT if this was the ultimate goal all along?
Yeah, if you want to move the belt to Io Shirai, why not just have her go over Rhea? You know, it wouldn't have hurt Rhea nearly as much as her going off to WrestleMania and losing there too.
Exactly. You could have sent Charlotte. She could have challenged for the SmackDown Women's title, gotten it off of Bayley. 20 different things you could have done. But this is what you went with, and this is the outcome. For the first time in a while, I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed in the direction. Because look at it now. If you bring Charlotte back and she wins the belt back, now you're just doubling down on my disappointment. So how do you get this back to an area where I'm like, all right, I can get this taste out of my mouth? And be honest, in the women's side, it's going to take a while.
Mm-hmm.
It was a good match. Typical three-way match. Don't get me wrong. But I didn't feel like the booking got me where it needed to go.
No, not at all.
And I know, and breaking news by the time you hear this, Paul Heyman, removed as the head of creative on the Raw brand. But one of the things that's being circulated about is Vince is not happy with NXT's ratings either. Dear God, if his idea to help with that is to send more Raw and SmackDown people down there, it just scares me. Dude, a lot.
It's gonna make me stop watching NXT then. Yeah, and I hate saying that. It is.
Because at the end of the day, Vince is still in charge over the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that. There's got to be one boss. I do understand. But it's going to be a very interesting next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, if Vince is going to be taking over NXT and running NXT the way he runs Raw and SmackDown, then why the hell do I even need to watch that anymore? It's just...
And the reason I bring that up is that's kind of how it felt with this whole thing. It didn't elevate Rhea. I'm going to argue it didn't elevate Io Shirai. Congratulations, you won the women's championship. You know what? So
you didn't beat the champion.
Yeah, exactly. Now, if Rhea had won the match at WrestleMania, congratulations, you would have pinned the champion.
Sure.
I still wouldn't have liked a three-way match to win the belt, but hey, I don't get to make the calls here.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're gonna see, man. We're gonna see. I certainly hope that's not the case. That Charlotte's done. Again, nothing against her. I think Charlotte's a wonderful competitor, but she doesn't bring anything to the NXT universe. And I don't mean like WWE universe. I mean to that world, so to speak, to that product. She doesn't bring anything. There's nothing she can offer or add. And maybe it would have been different if there had been crowds, because I think the crowd would have turned on her and been more Rhea Ripley. And maybe that makes the match a little easier for me to swallow. We'll never know. But
still the booking though, that's what got me about it.
And I wonder if this was a call from above. I really wonder, Mark.
And like seriously, what the hell is the point of putting the NXT title on Charlotte for a month? Like, did that really like elevate the belt or do anything for anybody?
No, what it did was book that title just like they booked the women's titles on Raw and SmackDown. Quick, short reign, flip it to somebody else.
And technically, I guess you can count 2 more titles for Charlotte Flair because, in her title count, she never bothered counting the NXT title in the first her first run. So now she's a 2-time NXT champion. So, we'll just throw 2 more title reigns on her grand total.
So let's see. We got 5 Raw, 4 SmackDown. I believe it is. No, 5 SmackDown, 4 Raw reigns. 2 times NXT. Yeah, I mean, what else is left for her to do? She's not elevating. I think that's the issue. It's not elevating.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was my feeling on TakeOver. I enjoyed the show overall, but there was 1 or 2 questionable booking decisions, to be honest. But it was a good show. Don't get me wrong.
It was. And I don't want like that rant on the women's title to overshadow anything here. I had a good time watching this show. I really did. Mm-hmm. There were a couple little things that just got me.
And that's my fear. sometimes when I vent about something I didn't like. That doesn't mean I didn't like the show. You can like a show and still question some of the booking.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, I really enjoyed the show, man. I love the throwback stuff and the commercials and Todd Pettengill. Man, that was fun for me as a fan from the 90s. Overall, I really liked it. Would a crowd have made it better? Duh. Of course.
Mm-hmm.
But you wouldn't have had probably the backlot brawl either, the way that it was. It probably would have been changed somewhat too. So overall, I enjoyed it. Few questions coming out of it. We're going to need to see how they play out.
Sure. All right,
do you want to talk about Backlash? We have another event coming up.
Yeah, it's coming this way on Sunday. WWE Backlash. So I'm going to have to hand the reins over to you for that. I have no idea what the card is.
All right. Well, I'm gonna take you by the hand. I'm gonna lead you through. Hold yourself. Hold strong. There's a lot going on here. Here we go. Sheamus facing off against Jeff Hardy.
I didn't even realize that Sheamus was back.
He is back on SmackDown, as is Jeff Hardy, who was set up to look like he was driving under the influence.
Yeah, I heard about that.
And also may have run over Elias with his car. That was the inference at one point.
and he's not even bald.
He's not bald. No, I just realized where you're going with that.
Well, usually it's the bald guys that get hit that get hit by cars, you know.
That's true. Well, he did it for the
Austin.
Rock. Yeah. All right, Sheamus versus Jeff Hardy. Would you even like to hazard a guess, or are you going to take a pass?
I have no idea what's going on with them. I didn't even realize that Sheamus was even back at all. The last I knew, Sheamus was part of the Bar, and then I think he got injured, and then he was gone like forever. So I'm glad that he's back. I like Sheamus. I've liked him since he first debuted. I think he's different. You know, that there's not a lot of guys that look like him. I think he's a good power guy in the ring. You know, I like his matches. I look forward to watching that. But Jeff Hardy's another guy, like, and I know everybody loves Jeff Hardy, but he's one of the guys I just don't get. You know, like, I don't get the draw for Jeff Hardy. Okay, he does big spots, you know, like, I mean, I could go to the Indies and see somebody do stupid things like him, you know.
Well, when he changed the Twist of Fate from the Twist of Fate to a stunner, you lost me. Just going to throw that out there.
It's a stunner now?
Yeah, he does the Twist of Fate. It lands it as a stunner.
Oh. Okay.
All right. Well, I'm just going to jump out here, and I'm going to say that Sheamus dastardly finds a way to win.
Oh, is he a heel?
He's the heel, yes.
All right.
So
I like Sheamus. I like Sheamus as a babyface or a heel. I think he's better as a heel, but I just like him. I think he's fun.
So there's a really good chance we just started off 0-1 if we agreed on it. They'll probably go the other way. Let's get into a title match. I think this is good. The United States Championship on the line. Andrade challenging current United States Champion Apollo Crews.
Yeah, I saw that they changed it. Why they changed it to Apollo Crews is far, far, far beyond my understanding. I never saw much in that guy since he debuted in NXT. He's got that impressive looking standing moonsault, but there's so many other guys that can do that as well. You know, I don't think that he has much of a personality unless that's changed in recent years. I never saw it with him. I remember when they signed him, there was a lot of speculation. And, yeah, this guy's going to be so amazing, and I feel like that hasn't been the case at all with him. The fact that they decided to put the U.S. title on him is just mind-boggling to me. If you're asking me a gut feeling on this one, I'm saying that they're switching the title back.
Well, Andrade, to earn this opportunity, had to defeat Angel Garza and Kevin Owens in a triple threat match.
He defeated Kevin Owens?
Well, it was a triple threat match.
So clearly he defeated Angel Garza.
Well, that's how I would have booked it if it were me. But so he earned that opportunity to have this match, and I'm going to continue my offers. I'm going to say that no, Andrade is not going to win. I say
that guy has so much more upside.
I agree, but you know what? WWE's response is we can get anybody hot anytime we want.
Yeah.
And you know what? I think this is unfortunately, and no knock on Apollo Crews, because I can't say that. I mean, I think when he came into the main roster,
watching this stuff.
Mark, no one is hot. No one is hot on either brand. And unfortunately, like we said last week, we're now introducing Matt Riddle into that. God help him. He didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
He made a mistake of showing up to work and doing his job real well. Now, here's your reward. So, yeah, I'm going to guess Apollo retains it. Maybe they're going to see what they've got with him. And to answer your question previously, Andrade did pin Angel Garza after he was hit with the Kevin Owens stunner. So, yes, he did pin Angel Garza in that match. All right, so
after who was hit with the stunner? Angel Garza?
After Angel Garza, was hit with the stunner. And then Andrade got the... it's good shit. The Women's Tag Team Championship brought up earlier tonight on several occasions. The reigning, defending Tag Team Champions Bayley and Sasha Banks will take on that team's name that I butchered earlier, Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss. But there's a third team involved in the Iconics.
Oh, boy. Oh, they're back. They disappeared for the longest time, right?
They were gone for an extended period of time, yes.
Well, any reason why? Or they just didn't have anything for them?
It's never really been said, as far as I know. There may have been injury, and it just wasn't disclosed. They actually returned to action last month and actually pinned Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss in a non-title match. They have a victory over them, thereby giving them that opportunity. Because remember, the only way to get an opportunity at the tag belt is to beat the champs in a non-title match. We know that. So
I'm glad that they're back. I think that Peyton Royce and Billie Kay are two of the most entertaining women on the roster. I love them. I think they're fantastic when you give them the mic. I know they're annoying as all hell, but that's their gimmick, and they're so good at it.
I think they're criminally underutilized, criminally, and they have so much more to offer. And we saw that in NXT, and they've never been able to scratch the surface there. So perhaps they walk out with the belts. I see one of the two teams winning, and Bayley and Sasha finally imploding, leading to a match at SummerSlam. I mean, because hey, it's got to happen at some point, right?
Yeah.
Eventually, I'm going to get one of those predictions right. Who do you have? You have the Iconics going over?
I'm going to say the Iconics just because they haven't been around and I love them.
All right, well, I'll take Nikki and Alexa to become three-time Women's Tag Team Champions. Mm-hmm. All right, the next match could be termed the greatest wrestling match ever. Edge.
What a crock of
Randy
shit,
Orton.
What a crock of shit.
Don't hold back, Mark. How do you feel? It's not good to hold it in.
We're like 2.5 hours in. I can't hold that back now.
He's like, I don't care anymore, man. This is who it is. So Edge wins the last man standing match at WrestleMania, which still may be going on. And now they've determined they're going to have just a clean one-on-one straight-up wrestling match.
Why? Why did they need to follow up the match at WrestleMania? The one at WrestleMania just seems so final. Like, let's move on.
Because Randy Orton said he could win this one. So obviously we need a rematch. Because you just can't go home back to North Carolina, back to my country, and just be happy that you won a last man standing match. I think Randy Orton's going to find a way to win this one. I think there'll be a third match. I think it's going to be in a 3-match series. I'm going to take Randy Orton to win the greatest wrestling match ever.
I'll go with you there, and I'll even call the finish.
Call it. How does it end?
I'm going to say it's going to be a spear into an RKO out of nowhere.
I could see, and that would make it the greatest wrestling match ever. I see where you're going with that. Next up, the Raw Women's Championship. The current title holder, Asuka, will defend the strap against Nia Jax. # she does hurt people.
Yeah. God. I don't need to see Nia Jax winning here. Yeah. This has got to be like, this has got to be that first pay-per-view match after winning the title. This is like the easy win. This is going to be going in there. This is going to be establishing victory for Asuka. Has to be.
I would like to think that that's the case.
It sounds like there's a however coming.
You know what? I think Asuka was just a placeholder champion when Becky retired, or not retired, but left to
That's still left to be seen.
Well, that's true. When she left to take on motherhood, so I think Asuka's just the placeholder to get it over to Nia Jax. I really do. I think Nia walks away with the victory.
Okay. So,
could be wrong. I love Asuka. I really do, but I think that that's where that's going to go. Just a couple more matches left. The Universal title on the line. Braun Strowman defending his title in a handicap match against The Miz and John Morrison.
Good God.
You just weren't ready for that, were you?
No, I wasn't ready for that because...
how could you?
Why is the Universal Champion taking on a tag team?
Because they've been getting in his business, and he's going to deal with them.
Why are they getting in his business? What does Braun Strowman have anything to do with the tag team division?
Well, if you're not going to rematch him with Bray Wyatt, you got to do something, don't you?
I don't know. Maybe put him against a singles competitor? There's got to be a few of them on SmackDown, right?
No, let's go ahead and ruin the tag team division by beating Miz and Morrison.
Yeah, why don't they just have them go over the whole SmackDown roster? Have a 15-on-1 match. John Cena was able to do that.
But he's John Cena, and he had 5 moves of doom. Braun Strowman
this is
not.
Braun. He's big.
He's a country boy.
Yeah.
All right, so I think I'm safe in assuming Braun Strowman wins.
Yeah, I mean, why would they flip the title onto either of those guys? I mean, I love The Miz. Don't get me wrong; he's one of my favorites. Like we were talking about my my belt collection. I have right now. I'm looking at it. It's sitting on my desk. I have the spinner belt. Locked in the position where the WWE logo is an M, and I've got the Miz nameplate on it. I love the Miz. I thought he was a great WWE champion. I didn't feel like he got everything that he should have as champion. I feel like he's a good guy for the company. He represents the company really well, and I don't feel like they've done him any favors, over the years. I know he's got that show now, Ms. and Mrs., and from the clips I've seen, he's pretty funny on it. But I think that he's got a lot more to offer than what they get out of him. But I'd love to see him take home the Universal title, because and here's the thing. I would love to see him wear the Universal title upside down with nameplates that are right side up, like so that the WWE logo is a big M. I would love to see that, but it's not going to happen. That ship has sailed for him.
Yeah, unfortunately, it will not. So I think we both agree on Braun. Let's step away from the world title distinctions for just a moment. 2 other matches we need to address. Seth Rollins facing off against Aleister Black.
Why? Why is that match happening?
We need to get
Wasn't
Seth Rollins on the throne.
just feuding over the WWE title with Drew McIntyre last month?
He was, but Aleister Black got in the way of him and Murphy. So the match is scheduled for him to face Aleister Black, but who knows? It could be Buddy Murphy for all we know. It could be Austin Theory for all I know. So we'll see.
In the match instead of Seth?
Oh, I think more than likely it breaks down and ends up being some form of a tag team match. I just get that feeling. It feels kind of like a throwaway segment, so I can see that a singles match devolving to a tag match very quickly. They like to do that, you know.
Yeah. All
right, so if the match holds is held, I'm going to say Seth Rollins wins because he is the Monday Night Messiah.
So hate that.
I know. All right.
Doesn't he come out wearing like priest getup now?
He does,
as
yes.
well.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just awful.
I know. Raw tag titles on the line. The Street Profits defended against the Viking Raiders.
I've heard that they've had some really interesting, almost like Matt Hardy and MVP segments.
I think that's an excellent comparison, yes.
The
basketball one, definitely.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, again, I don't know each team's presentation on the main roster. If it were me looking at them side by side, it's like, well, and knowing them from NXT, like the Street Profits don't have a chance in this thing, you know, but I don't know how the Viking Raiders look on the main roster and whether they still have that aura about them where they just go in and just beat the hell out of everybody and win in no time, you know. I don't know.
Let me help you with that. Not anymore.
Yeah, I that's what I would guess is that they're not like that anymore, and I know that Vince likes the funny haha that is the Street Profits. Yeah, I'm
going to select the Street Profits just because I think it's too early to take the belts off of them.
Mm. Well, how long have they had them? They've had them for a few months now, right?
They have, yeah. When they knocked off Rollins' group to win the belts, so
yeah. Clearly, Rollins' group doesn't care about getting them back.
They got their sights set on bigger things like Aleister Black.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
how is Aleister doing on the main roster? Great.
Yo-yoed. They keep trying to make something special out of him, but he needs to win something to really be special.
Yeah.
And the last match would be for the WWE Championship. The champion, Drew McIntyre, defending against the almighty Bobby Lashley.
See, now that's interesting. I could get into that match. I like seeing two big guys go at it. Like it's cool. Like back in the day when there was like Undertaker and Kane and Big Show. I like that spectacle. They're not going to have the matches that like somebody who weighs 100 pounds less than them are going to have. But yeah, it's cool to see like two big dudes going at it. You know. That being said, though, these guys can move pretty well for their size, and when used well, Bobby Lashley can be really good. Unfortunately, in WWE, he's not really used very well.
Well,
he's never been used very well.
Dating back to when he first came onto the brands, and even in ECW, he seems to have ditched Lana and taken on MVP as his mouthpiece, which is an upgrade. MVP is a hell of a talker.
That's definitely an upgrade. I mean, well, those two were together back in TNA.
Mm-hmm. And so I think if given time, and I'm not saying that they will, I think this could be very, very, very physical and a lot of fun. I still think Drew retains. I don't think there's any way he loses the strap. But
yeah, I'm with you there.
All right. Well, there you go. We have now broken down Backlash. So those are all the matches on the card.
All right then. So it should be an interesting show. I'm not as amped up for it clearly as I am for the NXT TakeOver shows, but
Sure.
I think that makes sense. Knowing what this show is all about, it's clearly the reason why.
Sure, but you can have some good wrestling on a Sunday night. I look forward to that.
And it's cool seeing like the former NXT people there. It's heartbreaking to see them there. Yeah.
Yeah, it can be a real reminder.
It can be a real reminder of how much better things were down in the black and gold brand. It's just so. I think that's all we've got for tonight. Now that we're at 2 hours and 45 minutes.
We give the people their money's worth. That's what we're here for.
So, unless you had anything else, that's it for me.
No, man, I am good.
All right. So, that's all we've got for tonight. So, for Scott Tyson, I'm Mark Whites, thanking all of you for your support. So, go out and like and follow and subscribe and give us 5 stars and follow us. Have a good night. Bye. Hey Yo Radio is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The songs used throughout this show are properties of their respective copyright holders.